this a sports show?
You know this about me. I love the goofs and the ha-has. And that, frankly, should be the name of this show. I love the goofs and the ha-has.
Almost entirely.
I think for me, anything that's like, cringe comedy, my general inclination is to step away from that. But this sounds much smarter than I was afraid it would be.
Your whole brand is cringe comedy, Josh.
That's fair.
This is Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco. Take the show with you by listening on the Sports Radio 810 mobile app at 810WHB.com or by searching for Almost Entirely Sports wherever you get your podcasts.
That was a upsetting sound that I had to make with my mouth.
This is Almost Entirely Sports on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
It's good to be back. Back in the studio after a week from Radio Row in Los Angeles last week. Yeah, it's a little chillier here, although not the worst today. It's a little windier here, but yeah, I can stand all that. You know what's nice? Your own bed. A refrigerator with your own food. Those types of things. I very much enjoyed our trip to LA and back for Radio Row. I enjoyed the Super Bowl that followed it. I enjoyed the halftime show that happened in the middle of said Super Bowl. I've enjoyed lots of things over the last week, but nonetheless, very good to be back in Kansas City and back in this chair to do this show with you tonight. I am Joshua Brisco, Rudy Salazar. I can actually see now instead of just communicating with across states. Although occasionally it is still just as difficult to hear him, but that's more of a button issue than a Rudy issue.
I was about to say, it's the one nice thing is at least it's easier, and then to do the show, and then you're right. Like sometimes it's not as easy to communicate.
It's just nothing's ever guaranteed in this world.
Nope.
Not, a short physical distance does not always mean that you're going to be able to communicate flawlessly during a commercial break. That's okay. It's, we're all juggling. And there is some times where that becomes extremely evident. And there are some times where you get kind of a perfect little piece of story symmetry. I don't think we had this in an intro anywhere, and Rudy's now already at least familiar with one person's telling of this story. And I
enjoyed hearing this story.
I'm interested to hear what you know already and what are details that only I know. Because I believe you got a portion of today's lead story from our friend and coworker Jordan Foote.
Yes, I did.
And I've got several stories from last week in LA, that we will talk about over the course of this week. Also, just a heads up, Rudy, because this is going to be context that will be funny for people coming around in a little bit. There's a liner somewhere in there where I make the point that I was in the Las Vegas airport for like an hour. And within that time, I did get half naked in a Las Vegas bathroom.
Yes.
There's a liner of that.
I remember this liner.
We can bring that liner around next segment so people can hear that this is a canonically established thing. Because on Friday, very late Friday in the Las Vegas airport, I had a far worse experience than that. And the Vegas airport for me at this point is not slot machines to be enjoyed. It is a place where cursed things happen. I almost took a very famous phrase about what happens in Vegas, staying in Vegas.
I was just basically waiting for the time to use that line.
I almost took that phrase a little too easily, a little too literally. And on the way to Vegas, by the way, had a wonderful. In the span of a couple hours, I had one of my best and worst experiences flying / in airports / traveling this great world of ours.
I heard about the first. I assume it's the same experience. I heard you just had a great conversation with somebody for a whole flight.
There are layers to it, and I guess we'll go kind of chronologically here. And then we'll talk about the Super Bowl and the dumb way we talk about quarterbacks and all of that. There was. It was good.
Can I just throw something in about that? Obviously, I want to hear the story. But I'm also curious, I had to make myself watch it.
Yeah.
I did not want to watch it. I watched it because, like, you know what? Probably going to be asked to talk about it.
Uh-huh.
And if there was a third person on the show,
Sure.
and I knew that third person would watch, I just may have been like, you know what? Somebody else has watched it. I'll get the highlights on Twitter. I'm good. But I was like, you know what? No, I should watch. I've never. I had to force myself to watch that game like it was week 3, Lions, Vikings, Monday Night Football.
I tweeted near or at the end of the Super Bowl, this was the greatest Thursday Night Football game of all time.
It did not feel.
It felt kind of like Bengals-Rams Thursday Night Football prime time, where NFL Network's promos for a week were trying to convince you that Joe Burrow and Matt Stafford were actually Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes.
And it's not that it was a bad game; it was close. There was some back and forth. It was a well-played football game.
Yeah,
there wasn't a lot of penalties. You got some stuff at the end a little bit, right? But like all in all, it was a well-played game. And it not at any point. Well, I take it back. I was going to say not at any point did it feel like the Super Bowl. Once I saw 50 Cent hanging upside down, I was like, here we go, Super Bowl time. The Super Bowl's officially started.
The Super Bowl definitely began whenever, for me, it was just a moment sooner. It was whenever I saw that a full house had been brought out onto the field for the halftime show. Once I saw there was a house with compartments, I was in. But yeah, I mean, I don't think that outside of L.A. and Cincinnati, and maybe even not.
I was going to say maybe Cincinnati.
Maybe just outside of Cincinnati, I'm not sure how many actual conversations around the sports world today or yesterday have begun with, like, Aaron Donald, man, let's break it down.
I think for L.A., that was just a normal Sunday. Somebody putting a house somewhere in the city and then performing it.
Yeah,
that's just we just call that Tuesday in LA.
It was just Tuesday.
That happens at least 4 times a week. I mean, the Jonas Brothers just pop up on the middle of the streets and start performing. Oh, no, that was BTS. I take it back. BTS just pops up in the middle. Like, they just run down the middle of a street, block everybody off so they can't drive. And it's just like, hey, we're performing here. Music video time.
Diplo is on Radio Row. You know, that's the kind of thing. That's the kind of thing that just happens in L.A.
You were supposed to talk to him, but
he had a scheduling.
He dipped low out of there.
He did. Yeah, he certainly did. Oh, shit. It's good to be back, Rudy. Good. He dipped low.
And that's what you do.
Rudy had that thought.
Tackle, you dip low.
Rudy had that thought go through his head.
Miller dipped low a few times.
And he thought, you know what I'm going to do? Not only am I going to say this on the radio, I'm going to triple down on it. Dipped low.
Get it because his name is.
Yeah, I got it. I understood the joke. I just didn't think it was very funny. Anywho, yeah, I mean, like I might hold the airport stories for a long second segment here. I might give you, we could do the 30,000-foot Super Bowl sort of stuff here. Speaking of, high altitude, because it was weird, and it is how we end up having these remarkably stupid quarterback conversations that all get very serious. It's now Matthew Stafford is clearly a Hall of Famer. Okay, well, is Matt Ryan Matt Ryan won an MVP. Is Matt Ryan a Hall of Famer? No, he's just outside looking in. Okay, what if he would have beaten the Patriots in the Super Bowl? Oh, yeah, then he's a Hall of Famer. Wait a second, what?
I think the Mats are both in the Hall of very good players. The most important Hall of Fame, some would say.
If what's-his-name in the 49ers defensive backfield catches that pass from Matthew Stafford that was thrown directly to him in the NFC Championship game, Matt Stafford is now not a Hall of Famer.
He's on defense for a reason, Josh.
This is the dumbest way we do evaluations in sports, right? Like, you want to reward winners and penalize guys who don't consistently win. And at the quarterback position, at least, I do think there's something fair to that, right? Like, there is something to, hey, your level of greatness is in part determined by how far can you drag a team with you. But I think we've got Tom Brady brain rot, where like Dan Orlovsky said on ESPN today. Here's the quote because I saved this tweet. This is how invested I am in this particular talking point. The Bengals should win multiple Super Bowls with Joe Burrow. If they don't get it fixed this offseason, he's on track to become the next Andrew Luck. If I could bet any amount of money that I could find on over under 1.5 Super Bowl victories for Joe Burrow with the Cincinnati Bengals, I would put every single penny I could possibly wait to hold, and I would put all of it on the under of 1.5. That has nothing to do with Joe Burrow, really. Here's something that Dave Dameshek tweeted as we're just in this dumb part of this conversation. I hate that this is starting as sportsy as it is. Here's what Dameshek said. Here's the one Lombardi per year conundrum. Mahomes, Herbert, Allen, Jackson, Carr, Tua, Mack, Wilson, Lawrence, Dak, Stafford, Fields, Rodgers, Russ, Kyler, Brady, ? Blue chippers in college right now, blue chippers in high school right now. How many of those guys should win multiple Super Bowls?
At least in the next decade?
Yeah.
I would say at least 15.
I agree 100%. Got to. 15 of those guys should win at least 2 rings in the next 10 years. Otherwise, they're failures.
Yes.
Like, we just have a math problem there. We're just not very good at math.
Pretty good.
Like, look, I don't really want to have a Matt Stafford Hall of Fame conversation. I think he's very good. And now he's got a Super Bowl. Made a great play on a great last drive. Found Cooper Kupp over and over again. Awesome. I have no interest in Matt Stafford slander today. I also don't really feel the need to dip him in bronze right now. I'm good. Whatever, man. I just don't really care that much. The thing that I do care a little bit about is that Russell Wilson definitely was supposed to win more than one Super Bowl in Seattle. It's not going to happen.
Aaron Rodgers was definitely supposed to win more than one Super Bowl in Green Bay. Looking like, I mean, I don't think it's going to happen. Looking like maybe he goes back to Green Bay. Like there's at least a chance. So there's a chance it could happen.
There's a chance right now. There's also a chance where he retires.
Any more Super Bowls in Seattle?
Not in Seattle, definitely.
That thing is done.
No chance. Peyton Manning won 1 Super Bowl in Indianapolis.
I mean, Ben Roethlisberger, I believe, got his. I mean, I know he won one his rookie year, and his second one came. I mean,
a few years after that, not a terribly long time.
Within his first 4 or 5 years.
I was gonna say 5. Yeah.
And you start looking at, okay, maybe this is the guy who gets competes with Montana, right? Also getting to 4.
Yep.
Nope, that was it.
If Tom Brady and Bill Belichick were not on the same team, even. Maybe the Patriots win a couple. Maybe Brady wins a couple somewhere else. Maybe you have a few more then that you can disperse among everybody else around the league.
If Drew Bledsoe doesn't get hurt.
Right, sure.
Like, I think Brady eventually it was always going to become Brady, right? Like, but it might not happen until his 3rd or 4th year in the NFL, right? He might not become the starter until a couple years later, and now all of a sudden the 7 Super Bowls, maybe you're looking at 4 or 5, which is still incredible. But you need this perfect.
Just spread out
situation just kind of came together.
Just spread out the trophies again. Just put all the trophies out there. And again, remind yourself that there are 32 teams, and let's say there are 10 quarterbacks who should win a Super Bowl or multiple Super Bowls over the course of their career currently playing this game, okay? You would need each of those 10 guys for 20 years to take their allotted one every decade for a perfect 20 seasons. Of course that's not going to happen.
Or
that's the simple mathematical problem that all of football analysis ignores whenever it's rings.
Joe Burrow becomes the Chiefs' backup quarterback and Justin Herbert goes to the practice squad.
There you go. Then all those guys
Everybody
can
gets
win
rings.
multiple rings. That's a great call. We're just setting guys up to fail in these conversations. The only point of the Bengals should win multiple Super Bowls with Joe Burrow is so you can either preemptively dunk on Joe Burrow when he doesn't do it or preemptively bleep on the Bengals when they set him up to fail themselves, apparently. It's a horrible standard to set.
The only thing you can really be, I say certain of, just because so far we've just seen it throughout NFL history, but in theory at any moment it could stop because it's not a set in stone rule. We have seen every decade somebody has won 3, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
The 60s were the Packers, the 70s were the Steelers, 80s, Cowboys, 90s, 49ers, and then we saw Tom Brady do it twice, right? Like the Tom Brady and the Patriots had the 2000s and the 2010s. I believe somebody will win 3 Super Bowls this decade just because that just history tells us somebody generally does, that there is just one team that just is built different. Of course, again, there's no guarantee because you look at the current Super Bowl winning quarterbacks of this decade, I think it's pretty clear Patrick Mahomes is most likely to get to 2 more because it's him, Brady, who's retired for now,
For
and
now.
Stafford.
Yep.
Right? Like, Mahomes seems most likely, but also generally, when you go look at those other cases, Mahomes would, in theory, have the second one by now, right? Like,
Right.
like usually those did come in. It wasn't necessarily like, oh, you won one in, 2020, and then again in 2025, and then you hit one at the end of the decade. Could happen, but generally somebody will win. One quarterback will win multiple in a decade, but that's one quarterback, one.
You can look at Mahomes, Herbert, Burrow, Allen, Dak, Rodgers. That's just not Lamar Jackson. That would make it 7. Russ would make it 8. And you could say if any of those 8 guys were to win multiple Super Bowls, again, you could bring it down to just the 5 young guys that make it Mahomes, Herbert, Allen, Burrow, Jackson. Okay.
God, yeah, I was thinking about this the other day where it was just like, in my head I was almost like, is Lamar Jackson, weirdly enough, is he outside the top 5 in the AFC?
5
It's absurd.
5 elite young quarterbacks in the AFC.
All in the AFC.
Only one of those guys can even play in the Super Bowl each year.
Forget win it, because so far
Just
this decade,
be in it.
2 NFC teams have won it.
Yes, 2 old guys in the NFC have won it. Why do we have to? It's you know what the Orlovsky analysis on this. I know a lot of people like Orlovsky for lots of the like film room stuff that he does. He seems good, and some
He's solid, charisma, but
I think
some
I
outlandish
think
types.
I think his individual analysis is largely very good. I think his big picture analysis is largely very bad, and I think that's fine. There's no reason to force every one of these. If you're really good at breaking down what's happening in a play, I don't also need to hear you gloat about how Matt Stafford's now a surefire Hall of Fame quarterback because he had Cooper Kupp or that Aaron Donald made a play or whatever. I don't care. I don't care for that conversation.
To be fair, Dan was a backup to a Mr. Stafford for like a decade.
Yes,
They're
but
very, they're BFFs, some would say.
His brand is that anytime a quarterback wins a football game, he can take a victory lap,
Yeah.
and that's fine, man. It's fine. I respect his individual analysis. I do not think that everyone with good individual analysis has good narrative analysis. Which I'm glad the inverse is possible because I think my narrative analysis is really good, and I would not trust myself to chart a defense like opposite Dan Orlovsky. You know what I mean? So anyway, there's plenty of room for that dimension to exist. But what this piece of analysis of the Bengals should win multiple Super Bowls. And let's say you're giving Burrow 12 years, okay? The issue there is the same issue that comes up whenever somebody posts their record predictions for every team in the NFL. But if you add up all of those numbers, the league as a whole is like 40 games over 500. They're like, wait a second. That's not how this works. You had everyone in the AFC West going 9-7 or better. And then everyone in the AFC North going 8-8 or better, and everyone in the AFC South going 7 or 9 or better, and then everyone in the East going 10-6 or better because you love the Giants or something, you love the Jets or something. But you add it all up and say, wait a second, you did not actually pick all of the games to get us here. You just said something that sounded good. You know what? I think the Dolphins are going to go 9-7 this year. What about the Jets? Jets I think are going to go 10-6. I'm using 16 game schedules because my brain is still broken. What about the Patriots? Oh, they're going to go 11-5 and surprise some people. And the Bills, 14-2. Okay, so
How?
that math didn't quite work, but okay. That's if we could just zoom out on that bleep for a minute, I think we would solve like half of these stupid broken quarterback conversations.
Yeah, the reality is, like, again, just sticking with the big 5 of the AFC West. And again,
AFC.
Just of the AFC,
Yeah.
and just the idea that, which again, it's insane to think that Lamar Jackson might be at the bottom of that 5.
Yep,
and
crazy.
and there's a world in which like Trevor Lawrence is amazing next year, and maybe
Sure.
he bumps Lamar Jackson. It is crazy to me that the MVP last season is already now almost the forgotten quarterback of the AFC. The reality is, one of those 5, if not 2 of those 5, may never play in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that they weren't outstanding. Like, again, like Lamar is not, or is he the perfect passer? Of course not. Like, he has flaws as a passer. And he's still really good at throwing a football. he is still better than the vast majority of the NFL throwing a football. But because he will probably never play in the Super Bowl, you never know, right? I don't know. It's just there's a good chance that he never will. It'll always be held against him. Oh, it's because he wasn't a good enough passer, right?
Right.
Or if Joe Burrow, let's say he gets back to another Super Bowl and loses. Now all of a sudden it's the Dan Marino thing, right? It's he was a great quarterback, but just couldn't get his team, couldn't push his team through to a victory, right? Just couldn't win the big games. Like, well, I don't know if that's true. I mean, think about how hard, like, Joe Burrow, honestly, and the Bengals too. Like, I think they're going to be very good for the next decade. They kind of got lucky this year in the sense that before playing the Chiefs, who obviously have Patrick Mahomes at quarterback, it was Derek Carr and Ryan Tannehill. Most likely, when you go through the playoffs, it's going to be more like what the Chiefs went through, where it's Joe Burrow and Josh Allen, right? Like, you're going to generally have to go through when you look at that list of 5.
You're going to have to beat 2 of those guys.
Oh, and that is to do that every single year.
Yep.
I mean, it's impossible essentially because you're eventually going to run. You're going to be Josh Allen, and you're going to be playing the game of your life. And unfortunately, you're going to go up against Patrick Mahomes, who goes down the field in 20 seconds or 13 seconds, to kick a field goal to send the game to overtime. Right? You're going to literally play a perfect game and still lose because you're going up against another MVP caliber quarterback.
And to that specific angle of it, I am much more willing to let quarterbacks get a larger share of credit for winning than I am for them to get a larger share of the blame for losing. You can take it both directions, though, because, again, Jimmy Garoppolo was a Super Bowl playing quarterback and was a defensive catch away from being in a second one. What is he really? Or is he actually a guy that deserved to be in one and deserved to lose the NFC Championship game in the other? You have to make all of these judgments really arbitrarily. It's the Matt Stafford thing where he played some bad football over the course of the playoffs, but he will be remembered now as the guy that his narrative, however much of this is true or not, will be that he was awesome in Detroit every year, but the Lions are a poverty franchise, then he escaped to L.A. and led them on a juggernaut run to the Super Bowl. None of that is really true. Matt Stafford was very good in Detroit. He had some ups and downs in L.A. They won the Super Bowl. He had a great pass to Cooper Kupp, little no-look, little thread the needle.
It was a good Twitter video.
Great Twitter video. Great drive. Deserves the credit of winning that Super Bowl. Happy for Matt Stafford. But if Kirk Cousins were to get traded to the Steelers, and then he goes and wins the Super Bowl with the Steelers next year, now Kirk Cousins is a Hall of Famer. You know what I mean? Like, it's just those end up largely being the way these things get discussed, and it just kind of bums me out because I don't think it's very accounting for the other factors at play in what makes football such a tremendous team sport.
I mean, we've seen it just we've seen Mahomes now, right? His last 2 seasons in the playoffs, he has lost the last game in which he played.
Yep.
Josh Allen now has lost to the Chiefs twice in the playoffs, right? Like, the narrative now starts to build on those two even though they're obviously, like, they're the top 2 favorites to win the Super Bowl next year. Mm-hmm. They're very talented. One of those two is not going to win the Super Bowl this next year. Maybe both. Both of them might not even make the Super Bowl, but let's just assume one of those teams do. One team's not, and now all of a sudden that narrative again of Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes,
one of them's a choker.
Can't win the big game. Or in Patrick Mahomes' case, because I've heard this and I hate it. I've heard it on this airwaves. People like, you know what? Hope Patrick Mahomes just doesn't do commercials this offseason. Because he clearly was not prepared for the big, like, it's just, but that's what it becomes, right? Like, and it's not his fault, and honestly, and some of it goes to the family too, where it's just like, look at all this stuff around him, right? Is he too much of a, is he enjoying the moment too much? Is he not preparing enough for football? And they're just absurd questions.
Yes,
but if he does not win the Super Bowl next year, that just builds and builds and builds. We got some of that this year.
Those narratives
going to build.
Those narratives are not plants that have to be carefully constructed in greenhouses. Those narratives that always stem out of this stuff are weeds that come through the cracks in the asphalt. If there is a crack in the asphalt of it, because it happened to Thomas Brady, okay? Tom Brady occasionally had to deal with stretches of time of, is this the end of Thomas Edward Patrick Brady? I think he has 2 middle names. Is that right? Did I get all of them right?
Know.
I definitely think one of them is Patrick, and I think he has 2 middle names. Tom Brady, full name. Thomas Edward Patrick Brady Jr.
Junior.
So close. 4 out of 5. I don't even know there was a 5th element to that.
Not even the best Patrick Edward Brady.
Thomas Edward Patrick Brady had to deal with conversations about if he was washed or not before having his 3rd Hall of Fame career, right?
He had a decade where Eli, which remember, can't spell elite without Eli.
Eli Manning owned him
Owned him
for a decade, which was really 2 games.
It was like 4. Yeah, it was like 2 games over
and
4 years.
And by Eli Manning, I mean the Giants' pass rush.
Yeah.
But see how that happens?
And a crazy catch, because obviously we all remember the David Tyree catch. I think it was, I forget who had the catch in the second one, but there was another one where
it was either Plaxico or was Santonio Holmes one of those?
I think it might have been Santonio Holmes, where it was just, and it was also a good throw by Eli, where there's like 3 defenders near the sideline and a Giants
It wasn't Santonio Holmes. He never played for the Giants.
I don't know.
It must have been Plaxico.
Somebody. So it wasn't Plaxico for this one, because it was more of a lesser name. Because obviously David Tyree had the one in the middle. There was another one in the second Super Bowl that was down the sideline. I just remember there being like 3 Patriots players around him. And it was a good throw, but it was also like another just like, how did he catch this football?
Yep.
And that extends the drive. And Patriots, again, they go 0-2 Super Bowl. Or it's, and this is not quite the same, because they had one, I believe had won a Super Bowl before this, but it's Nick Foles catching a touchdown pass,
right,
to take down the Patriots.
Right. Is Nick Foles a Hall of Famer?
Yeah, of course. He beat Tom Brady in the Super Bowl, Josh.
You want to do quarterback big game analysis, by the way?
I'm actually all right with just like the basic analysis. If you beat Tom Brady in the Super Bowl, we're just going to have like a special little hall for you in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Yeah. But if you provide, again, we're talking about bad narratives are dandelions coming through the crack in your driveway. If you leave any doubt on any level, anywhere in an entire vacant parking lot, a weed will shoot through that, right? It just needs a tiny bit of sunlight and a little dribble of water, and that's how the last 2 weeks we had to take on a bunch of half-assed, half-hearted, half-intelligent, maybe less takes about how Joe Burrow is somehow this cerebral quarterbacking god and Patrick Mahomes is just a big dumb jock with a chooch, right? Like an obviously outrageously dumb take that we had to spray the Roundup on for 2 weeks because there was just a little crack in the asphalt and a weed popped through. Spritz, move on to the next thing. To actually have an entire beautiful, pristine front lawn, that takes a sort of upkeep that you literally have to be Tom Brady for. Otherwise, eventually somebody will, to continue the metaphor, mow right over that and leave you essentially back at ground zero.
Mario Manningham had the catch down the sideline.
Haven't thought about that name.
I forgot he
in
was
a tremendously long time.
Player.
I remember Manningham. I didn't even remember that his first name was Mario.
Yep, Mario Manningham. I believe Michigan, if I remember right.
Sure was.
Heck yeah.
So
sorry. The first four, so the Giants go down and score a touchdown to essentially give the lead. The first 4 plays of that game, or of that drive, are all to Mario Manningham. Ends up with 3 catches for, I don't know, like 60 yards basically on the first 4 plays of a game-winning drive in the Super Bowl. Eli just decided, you know what, Mario? It was Stafford to Cooper Kupp.
That's right.
Bleep it. I'm throwing the ball to him if he's open or not.
We remember the wrong Manning from that game. We're 3 letters short of. It's not about Eli Manning. It's about Manning Ham.
Manningham.
But the way that we talk about anything, we typically spend more time on the weeds than the pristine lawn or whatever. I think my metaphor has gotten away from me at this point. But if you want to have like a quarterback big game conversation, just if you get at least if you get a Chiefs fan in your life that has a bad quarterback ask them if the last 2 playoff losses from Patrick Mahomes, specifically for Patrick Mahomes, were those 2 losses created equal. Those 2 quarterback loss performances. In the Super Bowl, Patrick Mahomes was the last of the Avengers. Like, he was doing superhero bleep, and he had a bunch of dudes in front of and across from him dropping passes off their faces and failing to block anyone.
It was just Captain America and 10 Hawkeyes.
And that's being generous. And then against the Bengals, all of a sudden, now he's Captain America at the end of Endgame.
Well, he's Captain America post-serum in the first half. Then he's Captain America pre-Super Soldier Serum in the second half. Just a little scrawny guy.
I was going to continue my metaphor for my reading of it because at some point at halftime, Eric Bieniemy asked Patrick Mahomes, do you want to go score some more points? And Patrick Mahomes said, no, I don't think I will.
That's pretty good.
You got to trust me sometimes.
You're right. Oh, maybe he was like Spider-Man. At halftime, he's just looking at Eric Bieniemy. He's like, Tony, I don't feel so good anymore.
I don't
and he
feel
just
so
like, fades away.
Like, those are 2 very different performances that both end in not winning a Super Bowl, # quarterback loss. We don't have to do it that way. Matt Stafford's win in the NFC Championship game was less impressive than his win in the Super Bowl. And in both of those instances, the other team making one play would have very easily turned that game back on its rear. I just think that we have so many examples of not needing to do quarterback analysis this way that it really bums me out that people who should know better at this point still don't. And so now Joe Burrow choked. Matt Stafford's a Hall of Famer. Joe Burrow should win 5 Super Bowls in the next 4 years, and so should Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and Justin Herbert and Lamar Jackson. Those 5 young guys should all win multiple Super Bowls in the next 9 years. And if they don't, they're a failure.
And Aaron Rodgers should probably get one more in the NFC.
And Brady might come back. He should probably get one more.
Maybe Trey Lance.
Yeah, exactly. Those Niners.
Kyle Shanahan's a good coach.
If Kyle Shanahan doesn't win 2 Super Bowls in the next 5 years, he's a failure.
Jimmy G with Washington.
And if that's a great one. I disrespect to friend of Almost Entirely Sports Taylor Heineke, who will not be abided by any of that slander.
I don't want to. I just saw a tweet that I almost called them the Commanders, the Commanders.
Yeah,
were
going
to be in a quarterback. They were ready to make a big push at quarterback. Just like, no, please don't. You got the guy. Just roll with them.
Do you like that?
Or if they want to send him, here's the thing. I mentioned this in a message. I am all here for Taylor Heineke, backup quarterback Patrick Mahomes.
I'm
honestly,
ready for that.
It's honestly what I want. Like, I'd be thrilled to have Taylor Heineke as the Chiefs' backup quarterback. I'd be thrilled.
I like talking to Taylor Heineke. I feel like I certainly wants to keep getting his shots.
God forbid Patrick Mahomes went down for a game. He could step in and just Chad Henne. You remember the end of the Browns game with Chad Henne? Taylor Heineke could do that.
Made for that moment.
Made for it.
And as he confided in us, not a huge fan of the name Commanders.
Yeah. How's the Chiefs sound?
Change the Chiefs' name to the Kansas City Armada. He liked that one. Boom, you got him. Change the team name so you can secure Taylor Heineke to be the team's backup quarterback. That feels like a reasonable number of steps to get from point A to point B.
I'd be happy. Old Dominion, by the way.
Punted at Old Dominion. Do you know that? You bleep
I
hole?
didn't.
Yeah.
Look at you go.
Radio Row research.
Punted multiple times, though, I believe, right?
Yeah, regularly.
It's like kind of popping into my head a little bit.
Yeah, it wasn't like a one-off thing. Yeah. I think he was the punter.
I think he was
for at least like a year. I think.
Especially, I think he specialized in like the pooch punting, which was a thing at one time of having just quarterbacks pooch punt. I remember Ben Roethlisberger, I think, did that a couple times in the NFL.
Big Taylor Heineke show.
Big Taylor Heineke fans.
We'll take a break. At some point, we'll talk about halftime. At some point, we might actually talk about some of the interesting stuff from Rams Bengals. At some point, we might actually tell the story about how I had a really whiplash series of
Let's do it next.
A couple of airport. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see where we get when we get there. I thought we were going to start the show with it. And then we got to the 20-minute mark, and we were talking about weeds and quarterback narratives and everything.
It happens.
Keep trying to figure out why that is.
This is a sports show.
Yeah, we spent the last 40 minutes talking about sports. Can't make anybody happy these days.
Want more Almost Entirely Sports? Watch the show live on the Sports Radio 810 Facebook page. You're listening to Almost Entirely Sports.
Yeah, well, you know what you can see, Beards? There's a specific phrase for exactly where this one big old hole in the sweater is.
Uh-huh.
You can see Russell Westbrook's underboob.
Yep. I wasn't going to say it. I was going to let you drown.
With Joshua Brisco.
I'm here. Drowning in the underboob.
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
We'll talk about some other Super Bowl things, some halftime things. I've got stories from airports. We'll get to that at some point tonight as well. Also tonight on the show, we'll talk to Derrick of Chiefs Digest here in about 20 minutes, and Seth Keysor of the Chief of the North newsletter, the Times Ours podcast, The Athletic, etc., etc. He will join us at 9 tonight to talk about some of the stuff as he looks ahead to the Chiefs offseason, and we're going to have plenty of time to talk about all those things. I figure as long as we've got a football game that we watch that we could talk about, we may as well take ourselves up on that opportunity. And then again, yes, I've got airport stories. One of them is fun. One of them is a nightmare. Both of them I will tell at some point here tonight. I'm not sure how much time we'll have this hour, so probably going to do that coming up sometime later in the show, because we just got swept away talking about a pretty good football game and some really terrible narratives that are going to come out of that, and maybe people will learn someday, and most likely they won't, and that just kind of is what it is. The one other thing, I mean, there's several other things, but one of many other things from the Super Bowl that was sort of just a generally feel-good development, I don't think Aaron Donald is going to retire just because he's a human wrecking ball, and you don't see guys retire while still being clearly and obviously not one of, but the very best at their position. That just doesn't happen very often. But also, I mean, there was even a tiny bit of chatter around Sean McVay. He just became the youngest head coach to ever win a Super Bowl. And also, he's at least thinking about eventually having a life that isn't spending 16 hours a day in the facilities. That's an evolution that I think is kind of interesting. Plus, you get Odell Beckham, who has a great start to the game, scores the first touchdown, tears his ACL, which is a tremendous bummer, obviously. I'm generally kind of pro Odell Beckham. I think I just like it whenever people seem to soak up the spotlight, be themselves, and then people get mad at them for some reason. I was very, very heavily rooting for Odell Beckham and also rooting for him to be here next year. Don't know how his ACL will obviously impact that, but you get him adding a missing piece to his resume. Aaron Donald adding basically the only missing piece to his resume. Cooper Kupp being so confusing because he looks like he works part-time at an Ace Hardware, and actually he's Randy Moss. I don't know. I don't get it. I mean, I really don't.
The only time the Rams could run the football was the one time they handed it to him.
Which was also terrifying. By the way, if that was a tackle for a loss, all of a sudden, Joe Burrow is the face of the NFL and Matt Stafford is on the outside looking into the Hall of Fame. That running play from Sean McVay choosing to put the ball in the hands of Cooper Kupp, that's the difference between Matthew Stafford being in the Hall of Fame or not. We all see how dumb that is, right? Okay. But seeing Aaron Donald and then also Kupp and earlier in the game Beckham, seeing guys that have had tremendous careers. Kupp is obviously younger than the rest of them. Von Miller's already got a ring, so it's kind of why I'm leaving him out of it a little bit, leaving Kupp out of it a little bit. Seeing guys like Aaron Donald and like Odell Beckham who have had tremendous careers be able to put that one kind of missing piece into their remaining portrait of an NFL career, I always love that part of any championship. That typically ends up being kind of how I decide who I'm rooting for if I'm truly neutral on a game. And I ended up being, I think, pro Rams up through this game ultimately. But listen, just let me just read a bullet point list. Not great radio typically. But let me just read you a list of things that Aaron Donald has done. Because I don't want to have to see him retire to make sure we've all spent enough time talking about how much of an absolute wrecking ball he is. Unanimous All-American, Outland Trophy, Lombardi Award, Chuck Bednarik Award, Bronco Nagurski Trophy, ACC Defensive Player of the Year. Those are all awards that came all in the year 2013. That was all in college. He gets to the NFL. Pro Football Writers Association All-Rookie Team, Sporting News All-Decade Team, NFL All-Decade Team, Deacon Jones Award, 8 Pro Bowls, 7-time First-Team All-Pro, Defensive Rookie of the Year, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, and now a Super Bowl champion. Probably should have been Super Bowl MVP. This is one of the places where Twitter has actually made sports watching better, by the way. It gives you a second, or a lot of ways, maybe third or fourth screen experience. Early in the game, Aaron Donald was not single-handedly consuming Joe Burrow and eating him for sustenance. It's like, man, what's going on with Aaron Donald? He hasn't really made much of an impact so far. And then someone tweets out a clip and says, hey, if you're wondering where Aaron Donald is, he's here in the middle of 3 Bengals. Not 2. Literally 3 guys. There's a screenshot of a moment where there are 6 Cincinnati Bengal hands on Aaron Donald at one time. And I just think if that doesn't make you happy, you just might not enjoy football as much as you think you do. Because that's nuts.
There's also a fun Aaron Donald stat is he's been all-pro in 8 of his first 9 seasons in the NFL. Only 2 defensive players have ever done that. Reggie White, Lawrence Taylor.
And that
quite
is
literally, when you talk about greatest defensive players of all time,
yes.
It is those 2, and now it is those 3.
That is yes. That is where he belongs.
For greatest defensive player.
Yes.
In the history of this league. It is. You can go whatever order you want. You can probably make an argument for any of the 3. But it's Aaron Donald, it's Reggie White, it's Lawrence Taylor. Those are the big 3.
Yes. And I don't know, the idea of like, I wish we could know the good old days were happening while we were still in them, In part because we're so obsessed with the nitpicking and of the weed pulling that we talked about last segment. We watch greatness slide by too often. Or we want to make mediocrity great, and then not that Matt Stafford is mediocre in the grand scheme of human beings playing the quarterback position. But he's Matt Stafford. We all kind of know what Matt Stafford is. Don't get distracted by the quarterback play where Cooper Kupp has put up genuinely one of the greatest seasons in wide receiving history. And Aaron Donald truly belongs somewhere on the medal stand with Reggie White and Lawrence Taylor. And I don't know in those times were people talking about how they were eclipsing the generation's best defenders before them, or is that only something that we do after they've retired? Once the Hall of Fame debates are being had. I don't know. But I feel like we spend so much time in nitpicking and so much time in, well, he's not Michael Jordan, so that we ultimately end up losing out on some truly tremendous moments that make sports as fun as they are. I hope that doesn't happen here. We need to take another break. We went long in the first segment by accidentally talking about sports too much. Here we accidentally talked about sports again. Whenever we come back, we'll either continue the streak or maybe talk about the halftime show. We got options next on Almost Entirely Sports.
Did you know you can listen to Almost Entirely Sports anywhere, anytime? This is Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco.
Sports! Sports! We're talking about sports! Pew, 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 pew.
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Thanks to Tom Fear for sending me this tweet. Just saw this about Jarrett Allen, not the former Chiefs defensive end, but the Cavs big man.
Texas.
Cavs head coach J.B. Bickerstaff said that Jarrett Allen was unable to pause Pokemon Legends Arceus, so that's what led to a quick conversation about him being named to the All-Star team. Allen seemed to appreciate the message and went back to playing.
Got a new favorite NBA player.
I mean, my jersey is in the mail. Are you kidding me?
That's my guy. I want to meet Jarrett Allen sometime.
Hey, Jarrett, you got a second? Yeah, not really, coach. What's up? I got a alpha slowpoke. Are slowpokes in this game? I haven't encountered one. I don't think they are actually. That's bad luck by me.
Yeah,
I picked one that I've actually seen.
You picked like 240 of them.
Yeah, there's plenty of Pokemon I haven't yet found in Arceus, so I just picked one that I kind of thought would be funny in large form. Sorry, I'm catching an Alpha Bidoof right now, Coach. What's up? Oh, you made the All-Star team. Cool. I got it. It just keeps breaking out of this. It just keeps breaking out. Catching the Alpha one's really hard.
They are.
But
sometimes you get them first go, but sometimes it's 10. You've thrown 10 of those balls and you can't get them.
I have not caught one on the first go yet.
I have a couple times.
My Alpha Pokemon luck has not been very good. There have been knockouts one way or the other for me, and very little else. We will make some time at some point this week to talk about this wonderful, wonderful video game. I just didn't know that we were going to have a chance to do it through Jarrett Allen being named to the NBA All-Star team. But look, I'm just glad that we've got our compadre in the NBA. Jarrett Allen has to catch them all.
You are listening to Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco on Sports Radio 810.
WHB Kansas City, the power of sports.
This is SportsCenter.
I'm Steve Lennox. Celtics and Sixers in Philadelphia tonight. Third quarter now underway. Celtics by 27 at the half, now leading 75-44. Jaylen Brown, 5 of 5 from behind the three-point line and scored 26 in the first half for Boston Celtics. Marcus Smart ruled out for the remainder of the game due to a right ankle sprain. James Harden on the Sixers bench tonight, not playing. Harden did speak with the media earlier today. Also earlier today on First Take, Stephen A. Smith with his thoughts on what Harden needs to bring to his new team.
You, James Harden, you come there considering the way you departed Brooklyn, considering the way you departed Houston, and now here you are in Philadelphia. This is James Harden arriving in Philadelphia with profound, significant expectations, and he's got to deliver.
Stephen A. Smith today on First Take. College basketball, late second half on ESPN TV. Number 9 Duke now clinging to a 2-point lead, 74-72 against Wake Forest. Mike Krzyzewski did not take the floor at the start of the second half. School officials saying Krzyzewski not feeling well. Number 4 Kentucky, number 16 Tennessee set to tip shortly following Duke and Wake Forest on ESPN TV. On ESPN2 right now, number 20 Texas on the road up 3, 58-55 on Oklahoma. Earlier tonight, number 19 Michigan State going down on the road, losing 62-58 against Penn State. NHL Penguins at home down 3-2 against the Flyers. Sidney Crosby, his 500th career goal, that coming in the first period.
Keyshawn, J. Will, and Max. Love Doc Rivers, but there have been a lot of questions around how he's managed personalities. This is going to be great entertainment for us to watch how these two come together personality-wise. More from the guys Wednesday morning starting at 6 Eastern on ESPN Radio and ESPN2.
You're listening to Almost Entirely Sports.
Byron Pringle was born before you were.
Yeah.
And Byron Pringle was born when I was a junior in college. I just realized I could be your father. I mean, my social life would have had to have gone much, much better.
With Joshua Brisco.
Dad?
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Let's talk to our friend Matt Derrick of Chiefs Digest. You can follow him on Twitter at Matt Derrick. You can read his work at ChiefsDigest.com. You can also catch him, I was going to say bright and early, but actually I want to double check on this, on Wordle. He's your resident, one of our many resident Wordle fans / experts / enthusiasts. Are you a morning Wordle player or an evening Wordle player? Are you up at midnight to catch it, or are you always there with your coffee?
Yeah, I did do Wordle at 12:05 this morning.
Wow.
I was still awake. I couldn't sleep last night. Probably too much caffeine. And so, yeah, I knocked it out as soon as I did. But normally I would say I am before 10 a.m. So, like, first thing I do when early in the morning. I mean, early in the morning, 10 a.m. for me. Yeah, that's
right.
Pretty early.
Right.
But very rarely do I make it into the afternoon and evening before I hit the Wordle.
Do you have any New York Times-based complaints or feedback at all as they have moved platforms?
I mean, not yet. I mean, it worked pretty smoothly for me once I figured out I could go in and change my settings and get my colors back the way I wanted and everything. So got the dark mode on. That's what I need.
Got to.
So, yeah, I mean, it's okay. It looks a little different, which, and I want to bristle against the New York Times because, here's our little, thing that was on .co.uk.
Right.
Just our little thing, and now it's the corporate monster. So,
right. But I will say, I mean, surely living the American dream that a guy named Josh Wardle sold a website called Wordle for somewhere in the low 7 figures. Like, I'll tell you what, we're not going to do on this show. We're not going to hate on that man's sparkle right now.
That he just made for his wife because he wanted to impress her. Like, he was like, hey, I want to get the spark back. So I'm gonna go game for her because she's bored because there's a pandemic going on.
And sell it for millions.
Yeah, somebody wants to buy ChiefsDigest.com for low 7 figures. I'm out of here.
I hear the New York Times is looking.
It might be low 6 figures.
Yeah. I really do think that's the dream, right? You make something on a whim, and then all of a sudden someone wants to buy it from you for somewhere with 6 or 7 figures, maybe 4 figures, man. I don't know, something with a comma in it. That's a pretty
$50
good.
comes in handy every now and then.
You could buy Rudy's jacket for $50.
I mean, you probably get it for $25.
You wear that jacket a lot. I don't know. I don't want you to say something you regret.
What would the NFT of the jacket cost me?
Well, actually, $500. You can get the real thing for 10% of the price.
Yeah.
That sounds about right.
But the Wordle blockchain. Did you catch yourself being a grumpy old man at any of the crypto commercials during the Super Bowl?
I didn't, because I watched most of the game with the volume down.
Why? What were you listening to?
I was multitasking and everything.
During the Super Bowl?
And then through the first half I was cooking, so I was listening to the game, and I had it on my phone. But you know what? I blocked out most of the commercials. I mean, There was only a few that kind of, broke through. I remember thinking to myself, "Gosh, I really can't believe that Dolly sold herself out that way to T-Mobile." But and that Barbie Dreamhouse one, that was clever.
Mm-hmm.
I still can't remember what it was for, but
Me
that was
neither.
clever.
Yeah, I've also forgotten.
Which I guess wasn't too clever if I can't remember the product now. So all I remember thinking was that Mattel did a great job of getting a free commercial for Barbie and He-Man, and probably getting paid for it at the same time.
Yeah. No, that's good.
But the crypto commercials, I mean, no, they didn't. I mean, was Matt Damon in one again? I mean, that's the only thing that annoys me. So
yeah, the Matt Damon ones are a misery. Well, so it's funny that the level of enthusiasm you have from the literal Super Bowl is something that Rudy was saying in the first hour, is like very much where he was out of like, you know what, if I didn't have to talk about this game, I might have went ahead and just skipped the Super Bowl this year.
I did not want to watch it, and I think some of it has to do with the Chiefs, right? Like it's like I don't really want to watch like the Bengals play, but like I didn't really want to watch it. I watched it out of an obligation to watch it because it's the Super Bowl, right? It's the last game.
Yeah, I mean, is that similar to your experience, Matt? I, of course, a true lover of football, was excited to watch the Super Bowl because I'm cultured.
I was wondering how it was going to be, because I thought, hey, maybe Chiefs. I did sense a little, football, maybe Super Bowl malaise heading into the game from Kansas City fans. So I was kind of curious to see how the ratings would shake out, because normally Kansas City, if the Chiefs even aren't in the Super Bowl, it's still usually one of the top markets outside of the teams that are in it. And Kansas City was still the number 5 market. So clearly Chiefs fans tuned in. I mean, they weren't frightened off or anything. That wasn't it for me. I mean, mostly it's because I was making spaghetti I didn't make the pasta from scratch, but I made my sauce from scratch and the meatballs and everything.
Wow.
And that's usually, to me, like a 2.5, 3 hour process, and I think it stretched into 4, which was why I didn't get dinner finished until halftime. So that was part of my little just time management was my issue, I think.
That's going around these parts also, I think. So that's that's understandable. You also. Hold on, time out. Actually, I'm going to interrupt myself. Were you making spaghetti so you could just be eating a big bowl of spaghetti as Eminem was raring up to say the phrase "Mom Spaghetti"? Was that a thought?
That was not a thought, but
okay.
I guess that worked out pretty well.
It really did. I would, if you'd like to take another pass at that, we could cut this out for the podcast, and you can say, "Yes, that was my plan the whole time. I planned my day around that moment of perfect synchronicity." Did you enjoy the halftime show? You and I haven't talked about music a terrible amount for considering how much we've actually talked.
Well, once again, I had the volume down
during the halftime show.
I was talking on the phone to somebody, so I saw the halftime show, but I saw 50 Cent hanging upside down, and I saw a lot of people socially distanced on the field before they weren't, and I saw a bunch of people in their 50s, running around. But all I could think of is, my God, all those people are old.
That was the shocking thing, and this was pointed out a couple of times, a couple different places from different people on Twitter. The idea of like all of the former young people being like, finally a halftime show targeted to me, and then you look and you remember that like all of them are 50 except for Kendrick and Anderson .Paak, who you like didn't even get to sing. Then you realize that
they were only doing some numbers that are like 25 years old.
That's right. What it actually means is that we are now the olds.
My first
challenging
Ralph
for me.
album was Get Rich or Die Trying.
That
was the 50 Cent.
Which one did you do?
Neither.
Sounds like you need to go listen to an album again.
I didn't get rich, and well,
still with us.
I'm still here.
See, you say we haven't talked about music much and everything, and I will confess to this. My musical taste over the years. Well, first of all, I'm old, so there hasn't been a good album that came out in the last 15 years.
Yeah, anywhere in music.
For the most part,
the last good album came out was Tom Petty.
Certainly in the last 15 years of albums that I have purchased. I mean, the only artist I've purchased more than one album would be Springsteen, because I am an old white man. So that's one. I don't know. I think I was on cold medicine or something, and I bought an Avril Lavigne album, like 20 years ago or something like that.
Okay, so NyQuil makes you just go, she's a skater boy, says see you later, boy.
My musical taste, I'll admit, tend toward the mainstream variety, and probably what you would think of as the lame mainstream variety. I mean, seeing Dre and Snoop and Mary J. Blige at the halftime show, that's nice, but I think it was a lot cooler if MC Hammer was there.
Wow.
So, fun fact, my freshman year of college, you know who performed at a homecoming?
I'm going to guess MC Hammer?
No, actually.
Snoop?
Yeah, it was MC Hammer.
Okay, I was probably one of the...
First homecoming ever, MC Hammer performed, and he took a bat, and I forget. We were playing... I don't remember who we were playing, but I think it might have been Missouri. Basically, whoever we were playing, they made a mascot of him, right? Like a piñata. And then he took the baseball bat and hit said piñata, the mascot, destroying it, and everybody freaked out.
Please, Hammer, don't hurt him.
Yeah.
Please, Rudy, don't hurt him.
Maybe he had a hammer, not a bat. Hammer would check. That makes more sense.
Would have made a lot more sense, yeah, but when was this? Your freshman year of college?
Yeah, so this was
I don't expect you to remember a single thing from your freshman year of college. Yeah, sorry.
This will be another one of these gulfs in time between me and you guys.
Yeah.
Wasn't my freshman year or senior year? Well, I guess maybe it was my senior year. It was my junior or senior year. My second junior year or my final senior year. I was at the first concert headlined by Sheryl Crow.
Look, I guess I was prepared for you to say the first time that Chuck Berry ever played Johnny B. Good. So
it wasn't quite that bad.
It could have been worse, I guess.
Could have been worse.
That's funny. Well, I guess I'm just going to go ahead. I don't have any paper to crumple up for just the sound, but I would pretend to crumple up any questions I was going to ask you that had anything to do with the Super Bowl that you would have required. Thank you. This is our Foley work. That would have required you to have any sort of audio up on it. I don't know if there's anything from the actual game that interested you. If you want to just hop straight into Chiefs offseason talk / Wordle strategies, that's fine with me. I assumed that you would have had the volume up at some point.
I did have the volume up for the most of the fourth quarter. And certainly the end of the game and everything.
Yeah.
So but I can kill two of the three birds there. I can take care of two of those three topics at once by pointing out that if you watch the Super Bowl and you watch the AFC Championship game and you watch Tennessee versus Cincinnati and you do not come through with the conclusion that the Chiefs have to dramatically improve their pass rush, then we're too far apart. That should absolutely be your conclusion.
Okay, and the third box there is that
Wordle.
Is that a good first Wordle word would be
my first Wordle word for, I would say, like guess I'm trying to remember. I think I'm like 36 games in now or something like that. I would say for the first 24 games, my Wordle word was either stale or least, because it's got a lot of the common letters and everything in there.
Say the second one again. Stale and what?
Least. Least. It's the same letter.
Interesting.
But I thought, for a while I thought stale, and I'm like, you know what? I think least is more likely to come up than that.
Right.
And then I thought, you know what? I need a word that I think will pop up one day, because I want to get a one-word guess.
Yes.
And then
That's the dream.
Okay, what can I come up with? It's maybe got an S, a T, an E, and an A, and maybe just a random letter.
Mm-hmm.
So now my first guess every day is steak.
Ooh, I like that. I will say I try to avoid an S in my first guess, because I have found that I really like to be able to just pluralize something in my second or third guess once I have fewer letters to choose from. I'm not sure that's a good or bad strategy. That's just where I have found myself as of late.
I do like that strategy. I respect that. I do. And you know what? Frankly, the idea of choosing common letters is been absolutely terrible, because I cannot begin to tell you the number of days that I have used these letters and gotten 0 hits on my first turn.
You use all of those letters, and the final word is acumen. It's like, that's not how this is supposed to work, Wordle.
Exactly.
I just want it to be sharks.
Yeah. If I'm guessing least and the word is groggy, I'm really screwed.
Right. Yeah, it's over. All right, that's fair enough. So there we've checked some of those boxes. Let me run this by you. Just something that has sort of hovered around, and I saw a tweet that made me think of it the minute before you came on with us here tonight. It was something about whatever the Vikings are looking to do what the Rams are looking to do at their offensive coordinator spot. Kevin O'Connell's going to Minnesota, all of that. And a thought that I had is, as we sit here currently with Eric Bieniemy as of right now not being employed by the Chiefs beyond the end of the league year, right? That we've heard those tiny bits of rumors of, he could actually take a year off or go to college or go somewhere else. But we got like a day or two of those tweets, but then I haven't seen or heard any specifics about Eric Bieniemy potentially going anywhere else. I was wondering if you had heard any sort of actual ties, or if you haven't, does that say anything about that idea that Bieniemy might actually not be back next year?
It's been very, very quiet.
Yeah.
And at first I wondered during the offseason, during this whole process and everything, if that was part of a strategy, but I don't think it is. I think it has just been that it's been a very quiet process overall for Eric Bieniemy. He got the interview with a couple of jobs, and that was it looks like. Doesn't seem like there's been a ton of interest as an offensive coordinator, which to a degree surprises me. I would think that if a team, especially with some of the younger coaches that are being hired, I think Eric Bieniemy would be pretty attractive as an offensive coordinator, especially if he's in the mood to make the change. But honestly, to me, all of this comes down to, and I think the ultimate deciding factor about what's going to happen with Eric Bieniemy next year, it's all about what Eric Bieniemy wants. Whatever he's going to do, I think if he wants to come back to Kansas City, I think the option is there. If he wanted to pursue an offensive coordinator job, I think he would do that. But I think he's probably got to pursue it a little bit. I don't think he can just sit back and wait for somebody to call him up. But the fact that it was leaked out there that maybe he is considering sitting out and maybe looking at college next year, it certainly tells me that he, at least his side, his camp, is thinking about a lot of different things. And I still say, if Eric Bieniemy needs to figure out what he wants. If he wants to be an NFL head coach, at this point I think the NFL has told him, at least, not individually but collectively, that it's not going to happen from the OC spot in Kansas City. He's going to have to go somewhere else to prove what he can do if he wants to be an NFL head coach. If he wants to be just a head coach and he's willing to do it at the college level, he can do that, but it's really hard to do that from Kansas City too. Yeah. Because if you're a team that's playing every year until February or close to it, colleges aren't going to wait until then to get a head coach. So his really only option is, if he wants to consider being a college head coach, is honestly sit out and see what happens next year. I mean, and to me, once again, that's why I say it all comes back to me for EB needs to figure out what he wants and pursue that, because whatever he does this season, I mean, to me, it's just got to fit in with what his long-term plan is. And if he still wants to be a head coach, then I don't think that he can do that and be OC in Kansas City.
I'm just thinking out loud, so if you disagree with any of this, it won't hurt my feelings or anything. But I don't think that him going and being a head coach at the college level gets him any closer to being a head coach at the NFL level. I mean, think about the guys that we have seen get that jump, and it's always, I mean, it is guys like Urban Meyer, right? Where you're like, oh yeah, he did it at multiple locations at an incredibly high level for a long time, and then also, hugely backfired. You can get your Bill O'Briens, I suppose, here and there, but and maybe Bieniemy would have a truly unique resume in that spot, right? Where he was a high-level offensive coordinator for a great offense for a number of years, and then was able to go win at who knows where. I mean, it would be a place that currently has a head coach, as you've sort of pointed out. That, to me, though, doesn't seem like the most direct path, while also, as you've said, kind of looks like the NFL has said that being an offensive coordinator in Kansas City is not going to be the path that gets him there. So what do you think his best path would be if he does want to be an NFL head coach? Which I'm going to work under that assumption until he says otherwise. If he wants to be an NFL head coach, what would you advise him to do?
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, no, I don't think that it's a completely natural path from college to the NFL. And going to college, honestly, is quite risky. I mean, especially, I think, in this environment. I mean, in the current era of college sports and college football in particular, I mean, nobody's got a ton of experience with it. I mean, it's changing. The landscape is changing. And certainly Derrick Bieniemy does. I mean, his college experience and recruiting at Colorado 10 years ago is nothing like it's going to be right now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's just so many wild cards and X factors that I think going back to college carries with it a lot of risk. But once again, I mean, nobody seems to be interested in Derrick Bieniemy as the head offensive coordinator for the Chiefs and hiring them for their NFL job. So I think the lower risk but better opportunity for him is to go prove that he can do the exact same thing somewhere else in the NFL. If he can replicate that success, I think that's a big part of it. The only benefit I think that he could get from going to college is that if there's just NFL owners and front offices who don't think that Derrick Bieniemy has that CEO mentality and he can go to a CEO position at the college level and prove that he's got that, then I think that opens up some doors. But that's the only way. I mean, that's the only factor. And I still don't think – I'm with you. I still don't think that's a natural transition, because going from college to the pros and being a success with it doesn't happen very often.
It's interesting, and I mean, my follow-up there was what you already answered of just, what is it? What narrative does he need to prove wrong or whatever? And maybe it's something in that CEO mentality. Not that has always proven successful head coaches by any means. It's just, that's all very strange. So I'll follow back on something you mentioned earlier, talking about, hey, an actual takeaway from this run of playoff action. Because something that I've been thinking about as well, that puts this Chiefs offseason into a really interesting light, where you have seen elite pressure disrupt elite quarterbacks, or at least disrupt quarterbacks, period, all over the course of these playoffs. We've seen it in years past also. I mean, it's no secret that, hey, how do you disrupt Tom Brady? Well, could you get to him with 4 guys? Yeah, that would be great. That's a good way to affect any quarterback. But you mentioned that being a major part of what the Chiefs need to address this year. I think that's interesting because on one level, it's not like they haven't put a bunch of resources into that. They trade for Frank Clark and give him all that money. They pay Chris Jones after drafting him years earlier. They do put relatively high picks in to, Derek Nottie a handful of years ago, Colin Saunders a little more recently, both those guys on the interior. They paid Jaron Reed on I think their biggest one-year deal they gave out last year, unless I'm missing somebody. Maybe, I don't know, maybe Chad Henne might have ended up being something. I know it would have been Jaron Reed. You see them draft Mike Dana. They draft Josh Kando. Not that all of those guys were, surefire contributors, but they have addressed the pass rush it just doesn't seem like it's been the return on investment they were looking for.
Yeah, and certainly there have been other missteps. I mean, Breland Speaks was a misstep.
Yep. Yeah, good kid.
Even when they've taken some shots in different directions, it hasn't always worked. And and with Frank Clark, I mean, you got a Super Bowl ring, and that's what you were trying to do. I mean, you moved your chips all in 19 to get a ring, and Frank Clark got you a ring. So I'm not sure I can even rule that a lack of success. But the question is that yeah, I mean now you're paying now you got a $25 million cap hit on Frank Clark.
Right.
Is he producing like that? And clearly the answer is no. And yeah, I mean you look at and clearly the Rams had elite pass rushing skills. And what they were able to do once they brought in Von Miller, and you have a force like that opposite of Aaron Donald, my goodness. And Chris Jones, don't get me wrong, I think that Chris Jones is still the second best defensive tackle in the league.
Yeah.
It's just that there's such a gap between Chris Jones and Aaron Donald.
Yeah.
Because Aaron Donald's just on another planet.
Different. He's just different.
But again, I mean, if you've got a guy like Chris Jones who gets double teams all the time, you've got to have guys on the outside to beat one-on-one matchups. And that's the challenge, is that the Chiefs, outside of Melvin Ingram this year, for the most part, didn't have anybody that was beating one-on-one matchups.
Yep.
And that's a problem. So, yeah, I mean, that's why I say, I mean, beefing that up, and you're right. I mean, it hasn't been for a lack of trying. I mean, they've thrown some resources into it. It hasn't, outside of the Jones contract and Speaks, which was, in 18 at this point? It's been a while. I mean, and not that you can't find some gems, but for the most part, if you're going to get, I mean, edge rushers are one of those positions that you usually need to invest big-time first-round resources in that. And the Chiefs haven't been in a position to do that. It is a problem that they haven't hit on the shots that they've taken, because they have taken a few shots. But I also look at a team like Tennessee that, frankly, I don't think has the elite pass-rushing talent that the Rams have. But they knocked down Joey Burrow a lot too, because that's a very bad Cincinnati offensive line. I mean, I don't know how much better the Chiefs have to be. I mean, they just have to be better, and I'm just not sure how good that pass rush was this year.
It's wild because, again, I mean, like, maybe we're gonna belabor this now, maybe we're gonna belabor it for the next 4 months, but the defense was largely constructed front to back, or at least, front and back first, and then everything in the middle. The linebackers came in later. They invested in Anthony Hitchens, I suppose, as well. But Steve Spagnuolo has always had a defensive line pass rush front that's not only, that has an elite piece somewhere in it, but also has a rotation that they use. And they did dig into that position a number of times and then not get the production, at least as of late. And so now they're at this point where, and we can take this more big picture here, I completely agree that's something they need to prioritize, that needs to be something that this team is reevaluating all offseason. They have to get more production out of their pass rush when they're not blitzing than they have over even these last few years. But also, is that going to come at the expense of maybe being able to draft a guy that replaces Tyrann Mathieu, or draft a guy that replaces Trevarius Ward, or draft a guy that replaces Anthony Hitchens? Obviously, Nick Bolton is the most direct one, but are you going to find, who's your third linebacker going to be? Who's going to be that second wide receiver that they still haven't found? It's a little bit exaggerated because every one of the Chiefs' problems feels bigger than it is because they're under a magnifying glass, because they have the hardest parts figured out, right? Being your quarterback, your head coach, a couple elite pass catchers. It's not like it's not dire. They're not the Lions, but there are a number of legit questions at a few different position groups at this point, I think. Yeah, there are. And, and that's what I think makes the next few weeks even more important for the Chiefs, because you don't want to go into the draft ever where you've got a glaring need, and now you have to draft someone. I think the Chiefs were kind of in there in 2018. That they had to come up with an edge rusher. I mean, that was just the one glaring need that they needed to add to that team, because you knew that Dee Ford was coming up, and Justin Houston was probably not going to be with the team long term. I mean, that was an absolute must draft, and then you get to your first pick in the second round,
and all the guys that you probably wondered were gone. The same thing probably, you end up, and this was through no fault of the Chiefs. I mean, it was just the circumstances at the time, but 2019 was kind of the same way. They get thrown a curve on draft night and kind of have to come out with a wide receiver, and you get into that mindset and you make bad decisions. I mean, Brett Veach does not want to. I mean, that's the one thing he does not want to do is he does not want to go into this year's draft that he has to walk out with a safety or he has to walk out with an edge rusher. I mean, that's why you need to address those two things in free agency to me big time. Because if you get forced to where you're sitting at 30 and you need one of those two things, you may very well end up putting yourself in a spot where you're taking a risk that you don't want to take. Yeah. I mean, if you think that there are 5 impact edge rushers and they're all gone by 30, you can't take the 6th just because that's the next best one if you think that the 6th one is a third-round pick.
Yeah.
Same thing with safety. I mean, even if you're willing to move up, I mean, you don't want to be in a spot where you're having to pay to move up because you've got a glaring need that you didn't address in free agency. What you want to do is to be able to sit back and say, best player available. And the Chiefs kind of did that last year. I mean, I think they certainly went in with the draft with the intention that they were walking out with a center, and they were really, really glad that Creed Humphrey was there when they needed him. But at the same time, you can't to put yourself into a spot where you go into the draft needing certain things, and that's why I'm like, it's going to be interesting to me in free agency because I think those are two things that they absolutely have to address to make sure they don't put themselves in that spot.
I think center's a good comparison because if they would have had to have played this year with Austin Blythe in the middle and Nick Allegretti backing him up, I don't think the season would have gone fundamentally differently. Creed Humphrey is a better player on a great contract for multiple years. I think that's wonderful. But to your point, they didn't have a literal vacancy there. When they signed Austin Blythe, it kind of looked like he might have been the guy. Or they could have brought back Austin Ryder, perhaps even. Anyway.
Yeah, they had a lot of options. You're absolutely right. And as a result, they didn't have to. They wanted to get Creed Humphrey, but they didn't have to.
Right. You mentioned the safety position. I might just ask you this every week now until there is a solution. We've played a lot of percentage chance games here. Percentage chance on February 15th that Tyrann Mathieu is a Kansas City Chief in 2022.
I am going to take the wimp's way out and say 50-50.
I don't think it's a wimp's way out right now. I think what it's doing is setting us a great standard for as soon as you say 49% chance, alarms are going to start going off around the studio here. Like this is going to put us in a good spot in a couple of weeks the first time you up or down it by 15% in 1 week. Tell me why it's at 50-50 right now.
I mean, to me, it's 50-50 right now because there's just no movement. I mean, I don't see enough information either way. I mean, and maybe I should be taking that lack of information and lack of movement and saying that that's a 99% chance that he won't be here. But you see, the limited information that we have right now is Tyrann Mathieu going out and telling anybody he can find he wants to stay in Kansas City. Mm-hmm. And while I believe that is completely and totally Tyrann Mathieu being 100% genuine, because I think he's, for the most part, one of the more genuine athletes out there with what he says. I also think it's good business because right now, if he hits free agency, he's telling other teams, you know what, I really want to stay in Kansas City. Mm-hmm. So if you want me to come play for your team, you better bring the bag.
Right.
That's his message. So that's a good message right now because he's saying, I think, what Chiefs fans want to hear. He's saying what the Chiefs want to hear. He's saying what other teams need to hear if they're going to pay him.
This might be a little bit cynical, but the other element of that I think is smart from a player's perspective is that if something doesn't materialize, you're going to have said all that publicly, fans will have read it, and then it's going to be the Chiefs didn't want to bring him back. When in reality, it would probably be that, correct my numbers if any of them are terribly egregious to you, but where the Chiefs did want him back on a 2-year deal, and he did want to come back on a 4-year deal, and neither side came to a good agreement on 2 and an opt-in, or a 3-year deal with some funny money or whatever. Like it kind of puts the pressure back on the organization. Oh yeah, I want to be here. He's not going to say how many years or how many millions he wants, and the Chiefs, I'm sure, also Brett Veach said they love having him in Kansas City. I get that, But from the team's perspective, I think that ends up being where kind of the pressure is to do some of the penny pinching. Because if you're a player, your objective is to get paid. If you're the team, you've got to have a team built, not just for this year, but for 2 and 3 years down the line, right?
Yeah, and and the thing with Tyron and his situation is that, yes, the adage is true, deadlines make deals.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is that I think that those of us on the outside, and some of this has just been because of what language we've received from both the player and from the team, is that we arbitrarily created deadlines.
Mm.
I mean, yeah, there was absolutely a little bit of this. Week 1 was a deadline of going into the season. If anything was going to get done, it was going to get done by week 1. If it didn't, that wasn't going to happen. But honestly, there doesn't appear to has been anywhere close to getting anything done.
Right.
I mean, we've never had a moment where it's like, oh yeah, the Chiefs and Tyrann Mathieu are dickering back and forth between 4 and 5 years, or they're dickering back and forth between $14 million and $16 million. We've never even gotten to that point. So it's hard to know exactly how close that these guys are, when I'm not sure there's been a deadline. And we're getting to that point. I mean, yeah, there's going to be a deadline in March when free agency starts, because that's when it's going to be either he's staying or going. And I have no doubt that some NFL team, if not more than one, is going to come and make an offer to Tyrann Mathieu. And if the Chiefs aren't interested in making a deal, it's not going to happen.
We always learn something every week with talking to Matt, and what I've learned this week is that dickering is a real word. I heard it the first time. I thought, I wonder if it said bickering. And then you said it again. It was definitely dickering. And so I Googled dickering, and it's to engage in a petty argument or bargaining. Yeah, I mean, I trusted you. I just didn't know that for myself.
Well, see, that's what I'm here for. I mean,
the issue is that it's...
Would you like me? I could just bring a word a week, every time I come on.
I would love it. Okay, let's do this. Let me tweak that just a little bit. Here's how we're going to do this going into next week and beyond. You should have a word of the week, but you should not announce it. And I've got to keep an ear out to see if you have to try to sneak the word of the week by me.
Wow.
So if you say, if you decide for yourself next week your word is voluminous, which I think might be too common, but it's just a word I could think of. If you say, all right, I got to get voluminous in, and you try to sneak it past me, if I'm zoning out, or if Rudy's telling me, hey, you got to break in 5 minutes or whatever, you all of a sudden point team Matt Derrick. If I catch it, point team AES, and now we've also made it a competition because I apparently just can't let anything not be a competition. I guess that's more of a me issue.
I do like this because it's going to be very, very tough to come up with a word that I think you won't know, but is commonplace enough that you won't catch it.
Yeah, we got to thread that needle. I'm excited about this. Okay, this whole segment was just leading up to creating this bit.
I can't just say, oh yeah, my word of the week was bagel.
Right?
Because
no,
you'll never think that was the word.
Yeah, we might have to come up with some sort of standard there where it is a vocabulary word, right? I mean, if it's a good vocabulary word, but I happen to know it because I took Latin in high school, I think it's still valid. It can't be bagel, but it doesn't have to be, it could be hypochondriac, right? I know what that means, but it sounds like a good word that you have to try to sneak by me. You know what? All right, here's our third spin on this. It is a goalie situation, but after the fact, Rudy gets to decide how many points it was worth on a scale of 1 to 10. Now it's Calvin ball. So if your word was bagel, Rudy can say, yeah, you got to buy him, but that sucks. That's a 2-point word. If it's dickering, that's like a 9-pointer, I think. I'm going to be listening for it.
I'm buying into this.
This is a great bit. This is as good as this show's been in a long time. We have a new bit for next week. I can't wait to forget about that whenever we talk to you next week.
And then I will try and just slide the kick right by you.
And I'll probably at that point, Rudy and I will be so busy dickering that we'll completely miss it, and all of a sudden that's 10 points for you, Matt.
I now have a reason to look forward to next week.
Yeah, me too. Just next week in general. Well, all right, this is great. Well, I'm looking forward to it, Matt. We'll talk to you then. Enjoy dickering around in the meantime.
Sounds great, my friend. Take care.
Matt Derrick of ChiefsDigest.com. Don't go to Dickering.com. I just can't. Just some friendly advice. I haven't checked yet.
Don't do it, Josh. Josh.
It's a redirect.
Oh, boy.
Nope! Don't.
I told you, don't do it.
Don't do it. Really don't. We'll take a break here on Almost Entirely Sports. Shouldn't have tempted fate on that one. Almost always it just goes to like a GoDaddy like this.
Never
you could buy
good.
this URL for $125. And whenever it's a redirect, you start getting nervous, and then I hit backspace as soon as I saw the URL that was loading, which I have a Chromebook, so it's very hard to put viruses onto a Chromebook. I would say don't go to that URL with any pieces of technology that you value, would be my concern. All right, we'll take a break. That was Matt Derrick of Chiefs Digest. Check out his work at ChiefsDigest.com, at Matt Derrick on Twitter. We'll come back and we'll talk about, I don't know, maybe something Chiefy, maybe something sportsy, maybe Pokemon. I got a couple of airport stories. We'll and Seth Keysор's at 9. So that's your plan for the remainder of tonight's Almost Entirely Sports. We'll get there when we get there.
Take the show with you wherever you go. Listen live on the Sport. listening to Almost Entirely Sports.
Unbutton. 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 Zip.
With Joshua Brisco. On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Dick Butkus is so good at Twitter. Like I just popped up. Just gems. I think we can agree that curling was established so that 4 dads could get away from their families for a couple of weeks under the premise of national sport.
I don't think he's wrong.
No, I don't think he's ever been wrong. I think all of his tweets have been awesome, unless there was one that was decidedly not awesome, in which case I'm telling you now I didn't see it. All the Dick Butkus tweets I have seen have been bangers. And like on brand in some way, it's been excellent. Obviously, Matt Derrick was not going to be our music insider for that last segment, so we can talk about it now. I do want to talk about the halftime show on like 3 or 4 different levels, and then we'll have Seth Keysor next, and I got airport stories. At some point, we need to talk about the Pokemon game that Rudy and I both continue to put some hours in. I think Rudy has gotten ahead of me on the timeline, but we'll
on to the 5th area. I've not stepped into it yet, but
where are you in terms of
4 stamps
of frenzied?
I've gotten through 4.
Out of how many slots are there?
5.
Okay. So I'm actually farther than you in the story.
Are you also the 5th area?
I have not thought about it in areas. I've thought about it in terms of frenzied
each area there is
nobles.
Noble, yes. Yes. I have finished through 4. I have not actually stepped into the 5th area, but it is unlocked. I get caught doing anytime outbreak pops up.
How many stars do you have?
8.
Oh, geez, what?
Yeah. I catch a lot.
Okay.
I've done a lot of like going to just like anytime an outbreak pops up.
We're talking about Pokemon Legends Arceus. It's the new Pokemon game. We're both trying not to say too much because Rudy has seen way more of the game than I have, but I am farther into the main story than he is. That is what I have just confirmed telepathically here.
Anytime.
I don't want to spoil important stuff to anybody, but I did at least want to explain what we're talking about. The game is wonderful.
Yeah, anytime an outbreak pops up, I always go and do that. I've been doing a decent amount of the side quests as well. Like I would say I have like 80% of those done.
Okay.
So like every now and then I'll have a day where I play it for like 3 or 4 hours, and occasionally, usually I will then stop myself and I'll do something with the story. But there have been days like where I'll sit down 2, 3, 4 hours, and it's like nothing's actually really with the story. It's side quests / outbreaks.
Okay, I have here just as a comparison. I've done plenty of side quests. Many of them have been just like I've gotten the stuff or caught the Pokemon elsewhere. The one side quest that I went out of my way for was to unlock more hairstyles.
Yep.
Have done that now.
Understand.
Have a very fancy boy haircut. I think the hairstyle is literally called fancy. And I have seen 1 outbreak, I think, like total.
Only 1.
I have not traveled to them on purpose.
You have to go like back and forth a lot to unlock them. And
right.
I do that quite a bit with that
I have
thought
not.
process in mind. I will find myself, even if I'm progressing through the story, like I've caught 20 Pokemon or whatever. I'm like, you know what? Let's go back and let's see if I can't cause
can't find yourself an outbreak.
An outbreak to start.
I think it's very interesting.
That's where I've got my 2 shinies.
Did you catch the
Dustox
early shiny? Also, you technically have 3 shinies, probably, right? Okay,
technically 3. Yes.
There's a guaranteed one. We have played this game very differently.
Yes.
Probably for somewhat similar amounts of time. I did not play at all in LA. I played on the flight down, but not on either of the flights back for reasons that I will explain after we talk to Seth. That's going to be my airport stories in that next segment after Seth. But we've both played this game very differently, and I think have both enjoyed it immensely.
I did fill up all my boxes. I got the notification like, hey, your pastures are full. So
how many boxes does it let you expand to total?
So you can get to 29, and then in post game, I think that extends to 40.
I've got like 12 full boxes at this point, and I have gotten farther in the main story than you have.
So much.
That's crazy.
I catch a lot.
How do you have enough money or enough resources to make all these Pokeballs?
Farm a lot.
I
run around and like every ore I see, I'm going after it. Every tree I see, going after it.
That is one aspect that I have not enjoyed a tremendous amount. Crafting has been perfectly fine. I wish I had a little more space in my satchel. I'm tired of paying that mother bleeper.
I paid that guy. I'm up into the 20,000. So yeah, I basically every time I have to go in there, I generally just buy one spot.
Yeah, I bought a lot early, and I'm kind of that one every time kind of thing. I will also say this. I hate having storyline things spoiled to me, even to the extent where you say, hey, this isn't really a spoiler, but something happens. I don't like doing that to other people, but I'm going to here. Pokemon games are never about the stories, really. And I would say through the story that I have more or less played through, and that Rudy is 85% of the way through, and most people, if you've been playing a lot of Pokemon, there's sort of a core story to it that I actually... There's much more going on than there have been in other Pokemon games, maybe arguably other than Sword and Shield. It's pretty similar.
I think in that fourth spot, like what I just experienced, it's like the story started to become just like white noise to me a little bit, and now I'm kind of into it.
Okay.
Because like you get to that fourth spot, the mountains where you're climbing around, and some interesting things happen there, and you're like, oh, this is interesting.
There is a story choice that you have not gotten to yet. Not a choice of yours, a choice that they make in the story.
Yes.
That I actually kind of went like, oh, I didn't see that coming. Huh. Had a little bit of a reaction to it, even. It's not going to win a Pulitzer. It's not going to win a video game storytelling award.
Who knows?
But... maybe the biggest surprise is that it came as late in the game as it did. So I was like, oh, they're actually still telling a little story here. I also don't really know exactly what's going to happen next. I'm still out here I'm gonna be out here hunting for my Alpha Piplup / Empoleon.
Got the Empoleon.
I'm so jealous. I just want to have an enormous penguin on my team. That is my only goal, not just in that game, but also in life. We'll talk more Chiefs with Seth Keysor next.
You're listening to Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Spring is right around the corner in Kansas City, and your hometown friends at Bushnell are here to help you gear up for the months ahead. We share your love and passion for the outdoors, and we want to help you live out your passion. Whether that's hunting, target shooting, bird watching, or anything in between, Bushnell has the gear you need, including items like the Spectator Sport Binocular featuring focus-free, perma-focus technology. Come in and visit our Bushnell store location in Lenexa, or check out the all-new Bushnell.com to find the perfect items for your springtime adventure needs.
Hey, Kansas City, it's Brian Pringle with Victory Ford at the Legends in KCK. We want to wish everyone a wonderful 2022. New inventory has just arrived for the new year, and we are excited for what we have to offer you. Trucks, cars, and SUVs, we have it all. The entire team at Victory Ford is dedicated to one thing, serving you with respect. We take great pride in providing exceptional customer service that keeps the golden rule at the forefront of everything we do. Come see us today at the Legends in KCK or online at victoryfordkc.com, where our first price is better than their last.
Hey, KC, this is Jack Johnson from The Shift on ESPN Kansas City to tell you about the law firm of Gerritsen & Toth. They handle the most complex felony, federal, or state criminal defense cases. What sets them apart, though, from the average criminal defense firm is that they were prosecutors for 25 years. If you have any doubts, just Google them. You'll find that they have been doing this successfully, helping criminal defendants all over the Kansas City area for years. If you or someone you know are in trouble, call Gerritsen & Toth. They can help no matter the size of the problem.
The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely on advertisements.
Robert Brogdon's Olathe Kia has extended their 90-day money-back guarantee. So if you're looking to buy a new vehicle like the 2022 Kia Telluride, Seltos, or Sportage, buy from Brogdon. If you don't love it, return it, no matter what the mileage, and they'll refund you 100% of the purchase price. But if you do love it, you've got a great vehicle with a 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty. Drive with confidence in a new Kia. Shop OlatheKia.com or stop by. Just a short drive from I-35. Customer must register vehicle. Warranty is a limited powertrain warranty. See Kia.com or retailer for details.
Hey, Kansas City, Stephen St. John here from my main man, Ed Baldwin, and Community Mortgage. You know, sports are all about highs and lows. I think we know that in Kansas City. Fortunately, Ed Baldwin is all about the highs, like taking those high-interest loans away with your high home values that have accumulated over the past year. With home values at historic highs and interest rates this low, now is a great time to take cash out to pay off high-interest debt or remodeled before interest rates rise, all without expensive fees and closing costs. You know, many people find themselves needing to lower bills this time of year. The good news is home values are up, and the smartest way to lower your monthly bills is to use your equity. So call Ed Baldwin today, 913-825-1999. Applying with Ed is free, quick, and easy, 913-825-1999, or online at edbaldwinhomeloans.com.
Community Mortgage LLC, a Kansas licensed mortgage company.
This is your 30-day warning.
Michael Jordan jumper from out on the left. Good! Christian Leitner has hit the bucket at the buzzer!
Chalmers for three and the tie. He got it!
Rogers deep three. Ring it up! It is good as time expires!
March Madness, the Final Four, and National Championship are all on America's largest all-sports radio station. Sports Radio 810 WHB.
As a Shane Company jewelry consultant, I get to work with couples looking for their dream engagement ring. Many feel overwhelmed. They just don't know where to start. And that's what I love about my job. I get to make this important experience fun and easy. We don't work on commission, so there's no pressure. When you visit, first, I'll want to know, what are your ideas for your dream ring? What fits your lifestyle, your personality, your budget? Then we'll go from there. We'll look at ring settings and I'll show you options for the center stone. For example, if you choose a classic solitaire ring setting, I can show you how it'll look with different center stones, like a pear-shaped diamond or an oval pink sapphire. We have all shapes, colors, and sizes. If you're going for a big look with lots of sparkle, I can show you our halo ring settings. Or, if you want a ring that's ready to go, we can look at our perfectly preset styles. Visit your friends. We're in this together.
Now you have a friend in the jewelry business. Shane Company and ShaneCo.com.
Hola, Carla speaking. Carla's roofing company always goes above and beyond.
Yeah, we heard about next week's forecast.
She needs a new foreman to weather a storm of projects.
You mean another full crew before Wednesday? Mira, Jose, can you work Wednesday?
Indeed can help her hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. Instant Match instantly connects you with quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your sponsored job description. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
The home of the Jayhawks. Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Bean looking right, throwing right, has a man at the 10. It's Trevor Wilson to the 5, to the end zone. He's in. Touchdown, Jayhawks.
The official radio home for Kansas Athletics in Kansas City. Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Ochai for the tie. Yes.
You're listening to the home of the Jayhawks. Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Kansas City's hometown sports station. Sports Radio 810 WHB, Kansas City.
This is SportsCenter.
I'm Steve Lennox. They have gone final in Philadelphia, and it was an ugly one. Celtics by 48 over the 76ers, 135-87 the final. Jaylen Brown, 5 threes, 26 of his 29 in the first half for the Celtics, who have now won 9 in a row. Boston, 25 threes in the victory. In Atlanta, Trae Young dropped 41. Hawks, a 124-116 win against the Cavaliers. SEC college hoops right now on ESPN TV. Late first half, number 16 Tennessee at home, and right now leading 42-29 against number 4 Kentucky. Earlier tonight, number 9 Duke at home, tied in the closing seconds against Wake Forest.
The clock is running. We're under 15 seconds to go. Paulo brings it up on the left. 10 seconds now. 8 and 7. He's holding at the center circle. Griffin comes to set a screen. It's Banchero with 5 and 4. 3 and 2. Paulo on the drive. Off the window. No. Tap dunk. Good for Williams, but they're going to wave it off. And call basket interference. You can review that with 0.2 seconds to go.
And they better.
If it counts, Duke wins.
After the review, basket counted for Mark Williams and Duke. Blue Devils beat Wake Forest 76-74 call coming from Learfield. NFL Vikings will introduce new head coach Kevin O'Connell on Thursday. That from ESPN's Adam Schefter. O'Connell serving as a Rams offensive coordinator the previous 2 seasons. According to ESPN's Pete Thamel and Chris Lowe, Al Golden will become the new defensive coordinator at Notre Dame. Golden spent the last 6 years as an NFL assistant with the Lions and Bengals.
Hey, it's Greeny, and Wednesday we turn our attention to next year in the NFL. Todd McShay joins us with his mock draft. Who's your team going to take? You'll find out. It's Greeny, starting 10 a.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio and ESPN+.
Now it's time for very serious football talk with the man who met his wife on a blind date, chaperoned by his parents.
They actually came along on the first date with us. That was I rode in the back seat. I was 22.
The man who needs to take a minute to remember the names of all of his children.
Do all of your kids have the same first letter?
No, actually. Let me think. Do any of them? Tucker, Mason, Cole, Isabel, and Lucas.
The man who can defend you in court, but will probably choose not to.
I'll cop to this on a public setting right now. I am an aggressive cuddler in a consensual sense.
Comma, officer.
Good grief, he's a pastor too? When does this guy sleep?
You will find Seth Keysor everywhere except for in his or your bed, because not only does he not sleep, he's also a faithful husband. So that's important.
It's Seth Keysor of The Athletic on Almost Entirely Sports.
It's a Seth Keysor Tuesday. We're here in the offseason. I've used that intro now, though, for a couple of weeks, even though the Super Bowl just happened, because Chiefs season ended, of course, annoyingly early, I feel like is at least a reasonable word there. But the good news is we're now in that sweet spot of the season where sometimes you get some of Seth's best work up in the Chief in the North newsletter. You can read it there at mnchiefsfan.substack.com. And Seth, we kind of were talking in a little bit of a tear in the space-time continuum last week as we were talking as the If I Were Brett Veach piece was about to come out. I know you're looking at Orlando Brown right now, but we get to look back at the Veach piece. People can have their chance to read it. We can chat about that a little bit here now. You've got a little piece up right now about if the Chiefs should or should not pursue that third receiver. The Orlando Brown film review around the corner. You can be honest, you kind of like this part of the offseason, right?
I don't hate it. It's always fun to turn the page on a new season, especially when you don't win the Super Bowl. And unfortunately for me, I didn't know any other way of life until the 2019-2020 season. Right. So, I mean, this time of year is fun. This is the build your franchise in Madden part of the season. Right. And so it's a lot of fun, and I'm excited. This is gonna be just. There's just so many possibilities this time of the season, off season, right? And what's different for the Chiefs this year, just like last year, even though it ended badly, which it does for 31 teams every year because it's really hard to win the Super Bowl, they are closer than pretty much any other team in terms of, what needs to happen for them to win the Super Bowl. And that makes it a lot more fun because you can be a lot more focused on areas that need improvement and that kind of thing.
Yeah, we talked about this some last offseason. We talked about this some immediately within the last couple of weeks following the end of this year. But it sometimes it feels like the Chiefs have bigger problems than everyone else because their little problems are more important than other people's bigger problems. Because, the Lions need a quarterback. And until they get that quarterback, none of the rest of their problems actually do matter because they're the Lions, right? Like, if you're the Chiefs, we actually can spend 2 consecutive off seasons talking about a third weapon.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things to keep in mind is when we talk about the things that the Chiefs need, there are 28, 29 teams in the NFL that would swap rosters with the Chiefs in a heartbeat. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that's Mahomes, obviously, but it's not just about Mahomes. Not everyone has a Travis Kelce and a Tyreek Hill and a Chris Jones. Like, even if you just start with just those 4 guys, right? You have 4 mutant superstars who are among the top 3 at their position. Mm-hmm. 2 of which I would argue are the best at their position. Borderline inarguably, not quite inarguably, close enough, in Mahomes and Kelce, and then Tyreek Hill, and then Chris Jones. And if Aaron Donald does retire, Chris Jones is in his own universe. And so it's a really cool thing to know, okay, what do you need to win it all in the NFL? You need some superstars. You need some luck. You need some depth. That really is about how that goes. Those are the three things. It's like, oh, well, that sounds easy. Well, not exactly, because the luck part differentiates people a lot. And the Chiefs have superstars, and that's arguably the hardest part to acquire is the superstars. So it's an exciting time. You get to look at things and say, well, man, how can they be better next year? And how can they avoid becoming worse in certain other places?
Well, and so that's sort of that's the crux there of the If I Were Brett Veach series that was at one point If I Was John Dorsey, and now it's, If I Were Brett Veach Part 1, 2022 edition. And again, if you didn't read that piece whenever it went up early last week, you should go do that now, because there's a lot of stuff here that we're gonna touch on some of it. Some of it you gotta read it. So mnchiefsfan.substack.com. It's $12 per year. At bit.ly/Seth really hates money. This can be one of the quicker crash courses from you if you're feeling it, but I do feel like, and you set up the story this way, there's almost a 101 class, a prerequisite you have to take on the NFL salary cap before any of this can be discussed, and in particular where the Chiefs stand. So the Chiefs are in salary cap hell. They're not going to be able to sign anybody, and their roster's pretty much going to look the same as it was last year, but worse, right?
Yeah, you hate to see it. So should we just have another show?
Yeah. So now pitchers and catchers were supposed to report really soon, but your thoughts on the baseball lockout?
Yeah. So the thing with the salary cap, and I tried to have like a quick primer because I've written about the salary cap a few times, and you don't want to tread the same ground constantly, but also, not all the people that subscribe now subscribed last year, and not everyone catches everything that you write ever because, contrary to my commonly held belief, I'm not the center of the universe.
I'm still working to disprove that. I haven't been able to yet.
So the big thing about the salary cap is to keep in mind there's a few basic principles, like, well, because people want to say all the same things. You eventually have to pay the piper. You can't kick the can down the road forever. There are certain axioms that people treat as factual that are flexible, shall we say. So there's a couple things to keep in mind with the salary cap at all times. The first and most important one, I would say, is identifying the difference between real money and fake money. The last, full 2 years of Frank Clark's contract is 80% fake money. It's, they could cut Frank Clark right now because I think he's got this year and next year left on his deal. The Chiefs could cut Frank Clark, and I'm just using him as an example, mind you, because it's a big contract. They could cut him this year, and even if they don't designate him a post-June 1st cut, which is another way that they can screw with money as to when it hits the cap for dead money, and they could save $12 or $13 million. Dead money aside, right? They can save a ton of money there. Even though this year it's oh, well, he signed, a 5-year, $100-some-odd million cap, contract. People view that as, oh, well, that's going to hit $22 million a year. That's never how it works, right? You got real money versus fake money. You also have structure mattering. That also goes to the, a 5-year, $100 million contract does not mean $20 million a year. They can structure these however they want. They could, even if you just include base salaries, they could have your base salary be $5 million one year and $35 million the next year. And by doing so, you can layer big contracts together. Then, if you throw bonuses into it, you can have certain bonuses that count against the cap, but only over the course of 5 years. That's why when they say Mahomes' contract is being restructured, they are able to take his salary and say, you know what, we'd rather pay this over the course of 5 years than the course of 1 year. And you know what happens if you do that every year? Then by the time you get to year 5, you're no longer paying for that first year that you were doing it, right? It layers everything out. And when people say, well, you can't kick the can down the road forever, my response is, why? And they say, well, then you'll end up in salary cap hell. And then I say, prove it. And so what people will point to right now is the Saints. And here's my response with the Saints. They have been playing ridiculous salary cap games for 8 years now. And I will take 8 years of cheating the cap and kicking the can down the road and being able to spend far more than we should for 1 year of salary cap hell. Oh, and by the way, me, in all my ignorance, can play around with the Saints salary cap at Cap Calculator and have them ready to restart by next year.
Yeah, and
so it's 1 year.
The reason that they were terrible this year also is that Drew Brees got old and retired, and then Jameis Winston got hurt. It still isn't they were the exact same team. It just Drew Brees got old and retired.
Right. And so that's just a couple things to understand about the salary cap. So the funny money versus real money, layering and structure matters a ton. That's why you always look at what the guaranteed money is and what the bonus is, because that's how you know, okay, is this really a 5-year contract or is it like a 2-year contract? That's why when people say, oh, well, at the end of this contract, it's going to cost $30 million a year. It's like none of that is guaranteed. They'll never pay that money. It'll never happen because that money is pretend. It's fake. So those two things, and then the fact that the NFL just signed a bunch of new TV deals. They are about to enter full-fledged into the streaming wars that they've already benefited a great deal from. And let me just say, I have a feeling that DirecTV is either going to have to pony up an obscene amount of money to keep the monopoly it's had basically over NFL games. I got a feeling that Amazon's going to have something to say about that.
Yeah.
And so because of that, why does that matter for the Chiefs? Well, because it means the salary cap goes up because they make more money. So that's your quick primer. I think, did I cover everything there?
Yeah, I think so. Just basically the bottom line in your book being that, hey, none of these numbers are nearly as firm or as scary as they look whenever you first see them. And then there's your explanation on why. There are two moves that you mentioned within there, even just sort of in the fake offseason, plus one more that you mentioned in the newsletter that has basically at this point started to feel like a formality, which is restructuring Mahomes, cutting Frank Clark, cutting Anthony Hitchens. Those are three moves early on in this piece. It's three things that we all pretty much think are going to happen at this point. I'm just curious if there is any hesitation for you, or at any step in that process did you consider, hey, is there another alternative to any of these three moves, or were any of them any sort of difficult for you?
The Mahomes restructuring isn't difficult at all because that's what his contract is designed to do. It's a really interesting contract, and if I had the ability to give some NFL agents truth serum and force them to tell me what they think of that contract, everyone but Mahomes' agent, mind you,
right?
I'm guessing they don't like it because it gives a decided advantage to a team whose owner can write a $25 million check, because not everyone can do that every year. And Clark Hunt can. And there's certain advantages to it. And there's a reason it was built the way that it's built. So that one, no hesitation, no question, no other alternative, really. Yeah. It was designed that way to buy them cap space. With Clark and Hitchens, the only hesitancy I'd have with either is the dead money issue. I think Anthony Hitchens has approximately $2 or $3 million of dead money on his contract, to where even if they cut him, they're still going to owe him that amount of money this year, right? With Clark, it'll be something like $12 million this year, $14 million this year, something like that. And then it's a lot smaller number next year. Or if they designate him, which you don't have to wait until June 1st to do this, you can designate someone this, a post June 1st cut, then they spread out that dead money evenly over this year and next year, right? I personally would just as soon just rip the Band-Aid off and get it over with. Eat the dead money now. The only hesitancy I have would be with either of those guys if they're willing to take a massive pay cut to stay in Kansas City. That would be the equivalent of what they're already going to cost the Chiefs against the cap in dead money. And there's only so many ways you can restructure your contract and do that in terms of, like, dead money is just there.
Right.
There's not a lot they can do about it. They can't waive that. It's a salary cap mechanism, not something the player has control over. So only thing with Clark, especially because Hitchens' replacement is here. Nick Bolton was the better player this year and should be the full-time guy. Willie Gay Jr., same gig, even despite their hesitancy to put him on the field in certain situations. With Clark, there's no obvious in-house replacement. Although I would say he, outside of a stretch of games, he's been pretty average the last few years, but they don't even have like an average person in house right now, other than maybe Mike Dana, and we're not going to have him take full-time snaps. So maybe if he's willing to take a massive pay cut, but even then, if I were the Chiefs, I wouldn't go that route because I think it would discourage a hard reset of the defensive line. And I think outside of Chris Jones and hopefully getting Ingram to come back for another year, I think that's exactly what they need, is a hard reset of the top players on that line.
I'll take that segue. You just rolled it up to me like Paul Blart. Like, would you like this segue? Sure, I'll hop on that right there because that's one of the first things that you wrote about. And I think it at least as we sit here in February, this might be the most underrated of the Chiefs' offseason boxes to tick is across that defensive line. And look, every single position group is going to be absolutely bludgeoned to death over the course of the offseason. We all want to talk about the Chiefs, and we have nothing but time to do it. We will talk about how James Winchester's new contract. We will talk about that at some point this offseason. But as of right now, that defensive line, I think, is the thing that maybe, at least nationally, would not get looked at as something that is going to be getting the overhaul that I think you and I both agree it will/should. Walk me through that a little bit, especially as you go through and look at the various spots across that defensive line and the different ways that this unit could look different next year.
So I do think that's going to be probably the big story of the offseason. And one thing about Brett Veach is he really doesn't hide his cards in terms of like his number one priority. Mm-hmm. Like he honestly really should play it closer to the vest, but he really has, like when they said after 2018, our primary goal is to completely revamp the defense. And holy cow, did they. After 2019, he said their goal was to run it back, and that was their, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And after 2020, we got to fix the line, and they had what I would argue was one of the most successful offensive line makeovers in history. And this year, he talked about the defensive line. He talked about Melvin Ingram in particular, talked about a few different guys, but really it was like the defensive line, pass rush. Spagnuolo builds his defense from the front back. You can argue all day about whether or not you think that's wise. I think watching the last few Super Bowls, I understand that coverage is more valuable in the aggregate, but boy, does it seem like pass rush is super impactful in individual games. Mm-hmm. And it's just how you can end drives. Yeah. And ending drives, individual drives, is the name of the game in the Super Bowl, when you've got a one-off game to win, right? Aaron Donald proved that the year before, Tampa Bay against the Kansas City's fractured line. An underrated storyline the year before in the Super Bowl is the fact that Garoppolo, outside of one deep pass that he just missed, he was getting hit in that fourth quarter. Like that pass rush matters, right? And so I think you're going to see a pretty heavy reset. And when Veach says he's going to do something like that, he usually goes all in. So it really would not surprise me to see the Chiefs be super aggressive about completely resetting their defensive line. I hope step one for them is to see if they can keep Melvin Ingram for a reasonable price. Not because I think he should be one of the top two guys, but because he's shown he can be a really valuable third guy. Or a hyper valuable fourth guy. Right. If they get crazy with this. If Melvin Ingram is your second best pass rusher, you might be in some trouble depending on everything else. If he's your third best pass rusher, you're in great shape. And we saw that this year when Clark went through a series of 4 or 5 games where he was playing the best football he's played as a Chief, and Ingram was their third best guy. That pass rush was deadly. And so I think that's what you're going to see. And I think they need it because that's how their defense is built to win. And I think in terms of the concerns about the offense, they still had a top 3 offense last year in terms of efficiency. So everyone tends to only pay attention to how the last game ended, but you want to pay attention to what affected them throughout the entire year. And pass rush was a big part of that.
Seth, I know I got to get you out of here a little quickly on this wonderful Tuesday evening, so I'll tell everybody about the other thing you've written about, and I think we'll have some time over the course of the next approximately 6 months to talk about the Chiefs' need or lack of need for a third pass catcher. So we can get to that later.
I hate the offseason's length.
Yes.
That's why I will say I am not a fan of the longer season for player safety reasons and scheduling reasons. Now, if they added another bye week, I think you could get away with a little more. But one thing I do like is the fact that the season lasts longer because then the offseason is shorter.
I would like a 25-game season with like 5 bye weeks, and that way we can just really shrink down sort of this 2-month stretch maybe of not having actual football.
Exactly. Although then when would I have time to chart every snap of Orlando Brown in like 8 games? Because that's what's coming next. Because he's a super interesting player. I'm 4 games in, and he's so interesting. I'm really excited to talk about that. Hopefully next week that'll be ready.
Let's pencil in a running appointment, and we'll talk to you next time. Appreciate it, Seth.
Thanks for having me.
Seth Keysor of the Chief in the North newsletter, The Athletic, the Time-Czars podcast. Yeah, look, listen, man, I know it was shorter than usual, and I know it didn't sound the same it usually does, all right? I'm aware of these facts. Don't complain. We gave it to you for free. You can read his work up again at mnchiefsfan.substack.com. And like I said, we're going to have plenty of time the rest of this offseason to talk about some of these other things, but like the idea of, hey, is the Chiefs' defensive backfield depth actually in a good place right now? The idea of, I'm going to give away a little subhead that you got to go read his actual analysis, but like the idea of, boy, this defense could really afford to get a little faster and a little more physical. Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. What will the Chiefs do about that, though? Those are some things we'll talk about more over the rest of the offseason, as is the everlasting topic of his latest piece, looking at, hey, pros and cons. Do the Chiefs really need to invest resources in another pass catcher? He's written about that. You heard him mention there. Orlando Brown film review on the way as well. So lots of good stuff still coming from Seth Keysor. Again, mnchiefsfan.substack.com. You can use the button in the emails. If you want to get the free stuff also, by the way, you can still sign up and sign up for a free subscription. He'll send out some unlocked stuff every once in a while. It's also a good way to make sure you get the little button where you can get 60% off the asking price forever to lock in $12 a year for some of the best Chiefs analysis you're going to find in any corner of the internet. We'll take a break. More Almost Entirely Sports whenever we come back.
Did you know... You're listening to Almost Entirely Sports.
I was in Las Vegas for like 20 minutes, and I did get naked in the Las Vegas airport.
With Joshua Brisco.
Not completely naked. I was sort of Winnie the Poohing.
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Okay. Been stalling for long enough. I thought it might have been the way we opened the show. It's going to be the way that we nearly closed the show. I had, within one trip and like 2 hours, one if not two of the best airport/airplane experiences of my life, followed by decidedly the very worst one. So we went to LA for Radio Row last week, came back late Friday night. Our first flight, we got to LAX, everything worked out fine. Traffic wasn't anything deadly. We got through TSA, we got all of our stuff checked, all of that. And everything was working out just fine enough. You know, we didn't have time to hit the NFL Super Bowl Pro Shop in the convention center. We did end up having time to go into the one that was right there in our hotel while waiting for the Uber. I got myself a little Super Bowl beanie, a little Super Bowl lapel pin. Our dear Jordan Foote got himself a little Los Angeles Rams Super Bowl hat. We had our time, you know. We got our trinkets.
I always knew he was a traitor.
That whole, I think his Rams transition, and maybe not even transition, just sort of like acceptance, I think is complete. We got that out of the way. Got our stuff. Did our radio. Had our good time. Had our LA experiences. Got to the airport. Boarded the plane. Now our first flight was originally going to be LA to Denver and then Denver to Kansas City. We're going to get home, you know, with a little bit of a layover in Denver. We ended up leaving a little bit later and no longer going through Denver, but going through Vegas. As you heard in that liner, I've been to Vegas one other time. It was also as a pit stop before a very short flight when we were headed out to Lake Tahoe for the American Century Championship a few years back. We get on the plane from LA to Vegas, and I'm boarding late A's, early B's, Southwest, pick your own seating and everything. I'm walking back. I think I'll take an aisle seat, just a quick little flight, and there is a guy in a full pilot's uniform sitting by the window. I think, well, look, I mean, I'm not afraid of flying, but who better to sit with than the pilot, right? Than a pilot.
Oh, I just assumed it was a situation where it was like, hey, I'm going to take your seat, you take my seat.
Sure.
In the cockpit.
Right. Yes. Yeah, I sat down and then he gave me his little wings and he said, you're the pilot now. Fun fact, Southwest pilots don't get little wings. Southwest does not have those as a part of their uniform. Oh. I learned that on this flight.
Interesting.
The flight was like 40 minutes of airtime. We ended up having a little delay and all. So I ended up being in that seat there for maybe an hour. So I sit down. Pilot just sitting over there looking out the window. Got some earplugs in. Not earbuds, earplugs in. Minding his own business. I've had a long week. I am perfectly happy to chat with people in pretty much any circumstance. But if you make me decide for myself, you know, if I'm hopping into an Uber or a taxi or getting onto an airplane or whatever, if I'm in a spot where I'm gonna have a conversation with a total stranger or not, and it's up to me, I probably go to don't have the conversation.
I want to listen to my podcast.
I'm gonna say for me, I'm going that direction 65 to 70% of the time. Sometimes I'm hopping in, I'm a chatterbox. I start interviewing somebody before they even know what's happening, right? You know, tell me about your childhood. You know, how's your relationship with your mother? What do you love about your job? What do you hate? What are your hopes and dreams? Just depends. It depends on when you catch me. It really does. This is to say nothing of people who like want to talk because you know who I am for some dumb reason, right? That's a totally different story. I'm always happy to talk to people who know who I am. It's great for the ego boost. But if you say just total stranger, you know, I wasn't going to sit down and immediately strike up that conversation. Long week, already late, a lot of airtime still going on. But I sit down there. Going to be a full flight. So I sit down, And, both the pilot and I both are apparently giving off immaculate don't sit between us vibes because we get late into the boarding process and that seat is still empty. And that is when I will say something to the person that I'm sitting across from. The person that I was sitting across from on the flight to LA, we had the same thing where apparently the two of us just put off the right vibe that no one sat between us despite the fact that that plane had like 5 empty seats. Cool. Apparently I look like somebody you don't want to sit next to on a plane. Maybe I smell bad. If that's what keeps me some elbow room, I'm fine with it.
Sometimes you got maniac eyes.
I get it. If it works, it works.
All the jewelry can be mistaken for
brass knuckles.
Brass knuckles, yeah.
Great point.
Man, just walk around brass knuckles.
Both of those times, I was belligerently drunk. I don't know if I should have mentioned that.
Wearing no pants.
Correct. Winnie the Poohing.
Yeah.
Well, so then towards the end of the boarding, a lady comes down and she's wearing big heart sunglasses and a little backpack.
Feels right.
That has, I think it was the little kittens from Aristocats on it.
Oh, heck yeah.
Love
that movie.
She comes over and she says, can I sit there? And I say, as I'm now all of a sudden breaking back into social butterfly mode, this is the jolt I needed apparently. I said something along the lines of, yeah, somebody's got to sit there, and it may as well be someone with a cat backpack. So I'm like, all right, let's see where this goes. Well, so she sits down. I've got my AirPods in. I'm not even listening to anything yet. I'm just
transparency mode.
I have them in transparency mode because I was catching a vibe, right? And so she's got like a book, and at some point, I think her first question was to me about where I'm going or whatever, kind of airplane chit chat. And eventually, we talk for a little bit, and then she turns her question to the pilot, who has not spoken yet. I have not spoken to the pilot sitting over there, or I should say, the presumed pilot.
Maybe just cosplays as a pilot.
This came up in the conversation. And so she starts asking him questions. Now, he's basically flying to work, okay? He's flying from, I hope I'm not doxing Pilot Brad by accident. Told him to be easy to remember his name. My dad's name, it's my middle name.
Is your dad a pilot?
Not that I'm aware of.
Is this your real dad?
Nah, hard to say. And this woman's name is Autumn. I'm gonna try not to give any more terribly specific details. I don't want to accidentally dox either of these two.
The aristocrat's backpack.
That's right.
Pilot Brad.
And Pilot Brad.
No wings.
No wings,
because they don't do wings.
Well, and so I'm still kind of in that mode of
Radio
like
Boy Josh.
Exactly, where I'm like, I've told her that we were down there for Radio Row, and that me and a few others on the flight are all radio boys and flying back. But then eventually she turns.
Were they sitting by themselves? Like how?
We ended up kind of scattered on
so they were
most
all
of the flights.
First class, and you got
That's
kicked
right.
to the back.
That's right.
I get it.
No, Pat was behind me. I don't remember where we ended up with slightly different boarding numbers and stuff. So
it happens.
It happens.
I think. I don't know.
And also
I don't know
have
how
it.
Airports work.
It happens, and also I have it written in my contract that I cannot be forced to sit next to Jason Anderson under any circumstances, plain otherwise. So she turns her attention to the pilot, and she starts asking just questions. And at first, I think the pilot's like, he's on a commute, basically, right?
Yeah.
To a destination where he will be the one flying.
This is basically an Uber for him.
Basically, right. But like, at some point, this is where it all opens up for me, is she asks something about like the oxygen masks. She asks, how long do those have oxygen in them if they were to drop down? I think the answer was something like 30 minutes.
Oh, wow. Quite a bit of oxygen.
But the conversation turned. I didn't write any of this down. I'm shocked by how much of this I'm remembering as I'm reliving it. The conversation, I think, turned when the pilot said, do you know why there are 4 of them above every row of 3 seats?
I did not know there were 4 above rows of 3 seats.
I did know there were 4. They say it. You got to listen to the safety instructions.
Well, I got my headphones in. Well, here's the problem. Last time I was on a plane, I always had the AirPods in, and I didn't have transparency mode.
Now you do. There are 4 above you in each one. It was like, do you know why there are 4?
For a baby, I assume.
I assumed that it was in case one of them was faulty or whatever. You just want to have an extra. I don't know.
Like a baby is kind of, I guess, what would be my guess, just because, like, if you have a young child, they do not get
have
their
a
seat.
ticket, do not
They
have a
are
seat.
on your lap.
That is the correct answer.
Woo, look at me go.
Do you know how they work?
No.
There's a little tube on the side of the mask. They tell you to pull on that. Do you know why? I
do not.
That yellow thing, I've just always sort of assumed it was like a filtration device of some sort because I'm not very smart. Well, what it is it's like, have you ever used JB Weld? You know, it's like a plastic, I don't know. It's like a super glue sort of concoction, at least the version of it that I've used. And it comes in two types. So you squeeze them together and then you mix them up and then that becomes a super tough, like super glue.
Yeah, definitely have never used this before.
That's fine. So, well, I'm kind of a manly man and, you know, so I've used it.
I fix things with duct tape.
Right.
Generally.
Well, so apparently.
Duct tape and a wrench, and you can fix anything in your house.
95% of things.
Anything.
So the yellow mask thing is a compartment that has two different types of chemicals in it. You pull on the tube, and there's apparently like a thin little metal sheet that pulls out, and then those chemicals begin mixing together, and they create the reaction that gives you something like 20 or 30 minutes of oxygen. At that point, we were off. Because somewhere in there...
I mean, it's a science class at this point.
We were learning about, hey, so is there a speed limit? Can planes fly faster to make up lost time? The answer is yes, but it burns more fuel. And if you're only flying to Vegas, it doesn't really matter. You have to do the fuel calculations to save like 2 minutes. Like, okay, so what about jet streams?
I've had this.
They plan flights to either be with the jet stream if it's going with you, or to avoid it if it's coming back in your face.
It makes sense because like I've had this thought like of any time I've just been driving around, and sometimes it's me who's running late, right? So you drive a little faster, then you realize I'm going 10 miles over the speed limit, which may get me in trouble, but I'm only driving like 5 miles. So I'm really only saving myself maybe 30 seconds.
I did this mental math driving to college all the time.
Yeah, it's like, is it really worth it? Right? Because like you're really not, the only way you really save time is if you're driving with somebody who drives very fast from like, say, I don't know, off the top of my head, like here to Minneapolis, right? Like I'm just a totally random situation that popped in my head.
Sure,
not
totally
an experience
random.
I've ever done before.
No.
Then you can make up some time. You could possibly make up like a full hour. It's possible.
I can't imagine that you would have any way of proving that, but
I can't. But
you say that it's possible.
Going to work though, no, you're not going to save any time. I assume that makes perfect sense. If you're going from Las Vegas to L.A. or L.A. to Las Vegas in your case, it doesn't 1 minute doesn't matter.
No, doesn't matter at all.
It doesn't matter.
Especially not for the cost of having to, use more fuel, all
now,
of that.
If you like really were trying to make up time going from, I don't know, Las Vegas or LA to Japan,
this is what he's saying.
Then you might speed up some, right? Like you might be like, okay, we got to get going.
So
hyperdrive.
At some point, they're like
strap in, Chewie.
Even on the ground still before takeoff, I've got the order of some of this a little bit out of order, but like we ended up taking off and going out over the ocean and turning around. I told him this. It was like watching a football game with Tony Romo. Where he's like, all right, so we're going to have about 30 seconds here, then we're going to take one left turn, and then after that you'll feel another left turn, and then actually I think they're both right turns, but whatever. And then 15 seconds later, it happened. He was like, you know what? Whenever we land, let's all judge. We'll all give a score of the landing, and we'll see. We'll all decide what we thought of the landing, takeoff and landing. When are you in autopilot? When are you manual? These are all conversations we had. We got to about 40 minutes into a 45-minute flight, and the conversation had sort of lulled. And then we landed, and I took out my headphones, and I looked at both of them, and I went, 7.5. I think Autumn said 7. I think the pilot said 7 or something like it was like, or she said 8. He said 7. We were all right on the same page though. Yeah. We talked about turbulence. We talked about autopilot. We talked about overcorrecting and undercorrecting, and it was wonderful. It was like having a personal TED talk with a pilot who was just there to answer questions. I at least once made some dumb jokes,
of course,
and it was great. I don't know if I would have told this whole story if it wasn't for the things that happened afterwards, but especially knowing how the rest of my day ended up going, I want you to have the context of just, I had such a pleasant 30, 45 minute. Oh, also, Autumn, the woman in the middle seat, and I came up with, I'm not kidding, between 2 and 3 Lifetime movies like that are pretty much ready to go. From Malibu to Montana is written. That's the name of it. It's basically written.
I love it.
It's done.
It's good, man. It's good.
I think there was a pilot/air travel one at some point. I can't remember. I do remember from Malibu to Montana though.
Mm-hmm.
That one's a slam dunk.
It sounds good.
It is good. It doesn't exist yet, but it is good.
It's a good name. That's a Lifetime movie name.
I think she and I both agreed that if one of us gets it made first, we will find the other one after the fact and try to, split some of the proceeds and all of that. So that was wonderful. We land in in Vegas. And important context is that we are carrying extra stuff with us. I've got my backpack, and I've got a bag with a tie line in it, which is a piece of equipment that lets us broadcast live from Radio Row back to here.
So fun fact for anybody who's listening, we generally always, and by generally I mean we literally always fly Southwest, because we always will have a lot of bags.
Yep.
Southwest has very generous policy of you get to check 2 bags and also have 2 carry-ons.
Right.
We are frequently, besides just obviously bags that like just your own personal bags, we have a lot of radio equipment. So anytime we travel, Southwest is the way to go because they let us take all of our bags, no extra charges.
Yep. And some of those, it's important to have. You want to have it as a carry-on because it's either a little bit fragile or it's just expensive.
You just want to make sure you don't lose it.
Exactly. And
it's just nicer. Here's the thing. Our tie lines come in have some sturdy cases. Could they survive?
New ones are smaller.
True, the new one is smaller. But the older case, could they survive? Being tossed on a belt? Yeah, they'd probably be fine.
Probably.
But it's also just better with something that expensive.
I'm with you.
Just knowing, and also they're not that big. But just like I see it, it's right here. I know it's fine.
I think it's kind of a bleep move to check to have basically your entire suitcase as a carry-on.
Yeah.
It's just sort of inconvenient for everyone else. I know it's more convenient for you. I don't mind checking a bag.
Yeah,
we had to check plenty of other stuff, again, banners and
I
whatnot.
don't even know if it is that more like you're trying to you got to get it into the overhead.
Right.
And if it's just like slightly too big and you're trying to get it out, like honestly, like
that's my inclination.
My general strategy, not to get too off topic, is
you got to make sure I have time to finish the story.
Is have it as a carry-on, and then they're like, if anybody wants to check their bags, and then a lot of times you can check it without paying the extra fees to check. But again, Southwest, you don't have to worry about that.
Exactly.
This is a non-Southwest airline tip. Almost every flight I've ever been on has been like, oh, hey, we think we're going to be a little overpacked or stuff, so if you want to check your bag for no additional cost, you can. I'm like, cool, yep, right here, please, thank you.
Absolutely.
So that's usually my strategy. Again, don't have to worry about the Southwest because they give you the 2x2.
So we had extra bags, and I had done the sort of checklist of, and I don't know what this says about me, Jason, Jordan, and Pat, but once it was just the 4 of us, I sort of took inventory duties upon myself.
Commands.
Of like, look,
I'm the pilot now.
I'm the pilot now. I'm going to figure out where you need to go from point A to point B. I'm going to keep an eye on the clock. I'm going to keep an eye on. We took the inventory of, okay, we checked 3 extra bags, and we're carrying on 3 extra bags. Well, we'll see. So, I had all that kind of lined up.
What's that you're Andy Reid right now?
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, I think that might become very true. So, we got all that figured out. We've got about 45 minutes or so between flights in Vegas. We get to our gate that we'll be boarding on to, and Jason makes the point that there's a Shake Shack in like Terminal B. Ours is we're at C19. We got to get to Terminal. We can go to Terminal B, grab some Shake Shack, eat there, head back. We'll be back a few minutes before we need to board. Cool. It's a long ways. I was actually going to do the math on this. I don't know if if there is a way for me to, let's see, like a Vegas airport map. I don't know. We'll see if I can. I'm not sure how that's going to go. It was I would say about a 15-minute walk from our gate to the Shake Shack. I hadn't had Shake Shack before. Also had In-N-Out literally the night before that. Shake Shack was outstanding. I am not here to tell you that In-N-Out was overhyped. It lived up to it for me. I would say their fries, a little underwhelming. Burger was great. Lived up to it. Happy to eat it in LA. Felt thrilled to do it. Also, if I want a great burger around here, I'm happy with Five Guys. I love Five Guys. I found out that I love Shake Shack, which there's one not very far from here. That might fight for spot number 1 on this list, by the way.
Down 119th Street, across from Chipotle.
I had never gone, and Jason swore by it.
Line.
I understand that.
It's good.
It's great. It was fantastic.
You can just order ahead, though, and just show right up, and they'll have it ready for you.
I will do that soon, because I think it is there with Five Guys, where those two, for me, I didn't have a bad Whataburger experience. I had a boring Whataburger experience a while back. I'm going to try it again here as well. In-N-Out was very good. Shake Shack was great. I think Five Guys is great. Little burger ranking update there. But so we go down to Shake Shack. We have the food, and we're like, all right, we're going to head back. Boarding's about to start in, let's say, 15 minutes. Let's say we make that walk back in like 12. We get back. We're at the gate. We're standing together. And I say, where's the tie-line bag? Now, this question could have come from a judgy place if that one wasn't my bag, which it was. And Jason, Pat, and Jordan are all kind of like, are you bleeping with us? Like, we checked it, I think. Did you combine it with some other bags? Like, no. I had the tie-line bag. I wouldn't have packed the tie-line bag. We did consolidate some, but I had the tie-line bag. Where is the tie-line bag? And they're going, oh, you must have left on the plane because you were having that conversation. I told them about these conversations. They had heard our cackling from rows behind us. You guys got to know, maybe you just left it on the plane. You were so whipped up in it, in the conversation. So no, I think I had it with me. I think I took it with me. I took it with me to Shake Shack. Like, well, better hurry. I start running through the Las Vegas airport. I told you it was like a 15-minute walk. It was not close. I run to Shake Shack. I'm calling the Shake Shack location number on my phone, trying to get someone to pick up down there. Just be like, hey, can you please I can tell you where I sat. Can you find a bag? Can you look for a bag? Can you find a bag? Find a security officer. Hey, can you get a hold of Shake Shack? They said, no, there's a white courtesy phone. They have a lost and found. Call that. I call that. I sit there for 30 seconds to find out that the lost and found is not working. No one is currently manning it. It's pretty late at night. I am running that direction. I'm probably 2/3 of the way to the Shake Shack. Not back yet. Flight to Kansas City is fully boarded. Paging Joshua Brisco. That's gate C-19. I called Jordan. I called Jason. I'm running and stopping because I just ate a giant burger, a bunch of fries, and a small shake. I took a lot of insulin. I'm running on a full stomach after not eating the whole day before that. I'm not in perfect shape, not in this kind of shape, running. I get to the Shake Shack. I have called Jason and Jordan several times. Texts, panicked. I have the bag. It was at the Shake Shack. Gate C-19, flight to Kansas City. Paging Joshua Brisco, and then also 2 other names that I can't remember. Flight is fully boarded. I'm calling them. I am running, stopping, wheezing, running, stopping, wheezing, running, speed walking, running. Folks, it was not close. Have I mentioned that it was not close? It was not close. I call them again. I said, guys, just tell Southwest says the flight's going to board. I think it was 8:25. It was supposed to, local time, was supposed to was like the departure. It's like, I will be there by 8:20 minimum. I am hauling. I ask one lady if she can call C-19 and tell them I'm on my way. She says, no. Also, C-19? She goes, yeah. I said, you're going the wrong way. Go this way. I have made maybe 10 strides the wrong direction before this lady has turned me around. She may have kept me from staying in Vegas on Friday night. I turn back up, continue running. I'm wearing my backpack. I'm carrying a big tie-line case in my hand. At some point, I had to make the mental math of what am I more afraid of? Me being left in Las Vegas, or this tie line being left in Las Vegas, or me being left in Las Vegas while the tie line is on a plane to, I think, maybe Houston? I get to the end of the sea gates. I have been paged twice. I'm running by a Southwest lady. I say, can you tell C-19 that I am coming? Sprinting. Get to C-19. Joshua? Yes! Sorry! Thank you for not leaving me. I try to board without scanning my boarding pass. She's like, can you scan your boarding pass? Like, yep, sorry, my bad. Scan it, get through, get onto the plane. My heart rate monitor was freaking out. My diabetes things were all very concerned about what was happening. I was dehydrated and exhausted. I felt like barfing emotionally and physically. I had the tie line. I was on the plane, and I just sat in silence and blew my nose for like half an hour. I don't know when I put my headphones in. I did not play any Pokemon. I just sat there and felt like hot effing garbage for basically that entire flight. That is my great, and miserable airport experience. We'll come back and Rudy can ask me probably time for like one question whenever we come back, but we'll take a break and come back and finish out this edition. In fact, I might go make sure the Thailand is just in the closet here just to make 100% sure.
Take the show with you wherever you go. Listen live on the Sports Radio. You're listening to Almost Entirely Sports.
I am a radio-doing machine at this point, where the only flaw is really my personality and technique and interests.
With Joshua Brisco.
But the technical aspect of it, I got it down.
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
I might see if Rudy wants to tell this story later in the week. We're not going to have time here tonight, but he was just telling me an airport story of his during the break. And one of the things in common is just this feeling of like, oh, I'm bleeped. There is a total, I am either going to lose a piece of equipment temporarily, and that's going to be my whole weekend trying to figure out where the bleep that went, or I'm going to be stuck in an airport where everything else the rest of this trip was planned on, you know, the ride back to the station, the trip back home, all of that, is just up in flames. The moment for me, and apparently when Jordan told this story to Rudy, he highlighted the fact that I just sat in a disgusted silence for a while. This is not the way I run this operation. That sort of thing has not happened before, and it was a misery to be in. But nothing is worse than being halfway, less than halfway perhaps, to the Shake Shack, where I don't even know if the bag is there for sure. I just lost it. I was throwing away trash and we were leaving something. Running to the Shake Shack, as boarding started 2 minutes ago.
Gate C-19 flight to Kansas City, Joshua Brisco. Where the hell have you been?
More show tomorrow. Till then, bye, Mom.
You are listening to Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco on Sports Radio 810 WHB.